Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Izuku has an evolution Quirk part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends, and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Do you think that this is the place? Asked a police officer as he and the rest of the police force hid within the shadows of the trees. Of course, it is. How many laboratories in the mountains do you know? Replied another police officer in a sarcastic tone of voice. Silent, you two. Do you want Professor Jens to find out he has uninvited guests? Asked a senior police officer in an angry tone of voice, causing the first two officers to apologize to him. To understand what is happening at this point, the police force and a handful of pro-heroes are outside a laboratory that is owned by a person called Jens Ren, a former scientist that works for the government before being fired for doing illegal. However, despite being fired by the government, there's been rumors that Professor Jens has still been doing illegal practices, and the police, with the help of the pro-heroes, have spent many years trying to find Professor Jens's laboratories. The breakthrough with their search took the form of a pro-hero finding an android owned by Professor Jens, which a specialist team managed to scrape some information out of the android, and found out that Professor Jens has a laboratory within the mountains. So, with the police force and a group of pro-heroes that the government believed to be suitable for the mission, hiding somewhere in the shadows, the pro-heroes are getting themselves ready. Right, does everyone know their roles? Asked Eclipso as she looked at the other heroes gathered who are Eraserhead, Captain Smoke, Midnight, Endeavor and All Might. Yes, you, Endeavor and All Might will deal Professor Jens whilst me, Midnight and Captain Smoke, along with the police, make sure nobody escapes. Eraserhead, also known as Shota Aizawa, replied as he put on his goggles that he is well known for. Good. We'll move out when the police are ready. Eclipso said, nodding with a small smile under her amber dark blue colored helmet. Who exactly made you leader? Endeavor asked with a disapproving look on his face whilst crossing his arms. Oh, come on now, Endeavor. You got to let the others have a chance at the limelight. All Might say with his usual smile on his face. This caused the flame hero to scoff slightly. Says the number one hero. Endeavor muttered, however, everybody heard him. If you're going to raise any objections, Endeavor, would it be possible to say them after the mission? Captain Smoke asked, causing Endeavor to glare at him slightly, the flames on his beard and mustache brightening. I'll remain silent, Captain Smoke said in a nervous tone of voice. It was then that rustling can be heard in the bushes, causing the pro-heroes to look in the direction to see a police officer emerging out of the trees. We're prepared for the assault, the police officer said, causing the pro-heroes to nod their heads. Time to get things started then, All Might said as he stretched his arms slightly. However, Eclipso frowned at him. She is one of the few people that knows about the injury that the number one hero received from his battle with All for One. Why did Grand Torin allow Toshinori on this mission? It's been like 3 months since Toshinori had his surgery. Is he able to fight? Eclipso thought, referring to All Might's homeroom teacher. Ready to move out when you feel like it, officer. Midnight said, causing the police officer to nod his head. Deep within the laboratory, a man in his 30s with matching blue hair and eyes that is snake-like, wearing a lab coat is sitting in front of computer. Everything looks okay. We should be moving on to the next phase of the project very soon. Professor Jens thought as he stared at the graphs on the computer. It was then that the door to his office burst open, revealing a terrifying person also wearing a lab coat. Was it necessary to burst through the door without knocking, on Sten? Professor Jens asked, slightly angry. TH there, H here. The now named Unsten said in a shaky tone of voice, causing the professor to raise an eyebrow. Who's here? Professor Jens asked, his anger residing slightly. TH the police and heroes, as 6 of them. Unsten replied, causing Professor Jens to become surprised. How are they here? This place was supposed to be undetectable, Professor Jens asked, causing Unsten to shake his head slightly. You don't know? But they're going to Unsten began to say but stopped when an explosion is heard throughout the laboratory. The government must have asked someone with a flashy quirk to help bring this place down. Professor Jens thought before standing up and walking towards the door. Where are you going? Unsten asked, confused slightly. To greet our guests, of course. It would be rude not to. Professor Jens replied, smirking slightly before a thought entered his head. It would be best if we move our project to a safer location. Would you deal with that, Unsten? Professor Jens said, causing Unsten to nod his head shaky. As Professor Jens made his way to greet his guests, some of his fellow scientists that decided to help him ran past, but he paid no mind to them. This will be a first time in a while that I will be using my quirk for combat. Professor Jens thought before turning a corner to see Eclipso, Endeavor and All Might fighting his guards. Oh? Just the 3 of you? I thought that the government would be wise to bring more than 3 heroes. Professor Jens commented, causing the battle between the 3 heroes and the guards to stop. So, the professor himself decided to make his appearance. Endeavor asked, a smirk appearing on his face. And I see that the government decided to ask the 2 strongest heroes for this mission, and Professor Jens began to say but stopped when his eyes landed on Eclipso. The name's Eclipso said in a slightly depressed tone of voice, knowing what is going on in Professor Jens's mind. I've heard of you, but never seen any footage of you, Professor Jens said in a thoughtful tone of voice. Give up, Jensren. Your time of doing illegal practices is over. All Might exclaimed, but Professor Jens remained calm. And what happens if you take me down? My fellow scientists will continue my work. Professor Jens asked, a small grin appearing on his face. Ha! Do you think that we're the only ones? Eraserhead, Midnight and Captain Smoke are taking care of the rest. All Might explained with a smile on his face. Professor Jens closed his eyes slightly before taking a deep sigh. Well then. I guess that I have to escape then. Professor Jens said before suddenly his skin turned into that of a snake and fangs appeared out of mouth. I've read about your quirk. Snake. It just gives you the abilities of a snake. Eclipso explained as she eyed Professor Jens's snake form. You indeed did your homework, Eclipso. But my quirk also gives me the agility of a snake. Professor Jens replied in raspy tone of voice before suddenly dashing towards Eclipso. The amber-masked hero just had time to raise her arms to block one of Jens's clawed hands. However, the impact did cause her to be sent flying. Eclipso. All Might called, becoming worried slightly as he watched the female heroine get slammed into a wall. You should be more worried about yourself, All Might. Jens said, smirking slightly as he took out a remote of some sort out of pocket and pressed a button, causing robots to appear. All Might. Endeavor. You two deal with the robots whilst I take on Professor Jens. Eclipso said as she got herself out of small dent on the wall that was created by the impact. Don't order me about, woman. Endeavor said as he turned around to face the robots. However, a smirk is present on his face as the flames grew hotter around him. Texas Smash. All Might exclaimed before throwing a punch, causing a massive wind pressure to rush past the robots. However, the robots only skid before stopping, mostly unharmed except for a few dents in the armor plating. These robots are heavier than they look. All Might said with an interested expression on his face. Well then, let's see how they can manage against my flames. Endeavor said before sending out a wave of fire towards the robots. Apart from the armor plating blackened, the robots look fine. I guess that we need to put more effort in our attacks. Endeavor said, causing All Might to nod his head. It does look like it. All Might said before the two of them charged towards the robots. Let's dance, shall we? Professor Jens asked before lunging towards Eclipso. In response, the female heroine jumped out of the way before activating her quirk, causing many small spears made out of light to materialize in the air before shooting towards Professor Jens. The snake quirk user hissed in pain as he examined his injuries. So, your quirk is light-based then? Professor Jens asked, causing Eclipso to smirk under her helmet. Maybe. Eclipso replied, causing Professor Jens to raise an eyebrow. What do you mean? Professor Jens began to ask but got interrupted as Eclipso attacked him. However, the snake quirk user managed to dodge the kick. Haven't I told you? I have the agility of a snake as well. Professor Jens explained as he created some space between him and Eclipso. Yes, you did. Eclipso replied dryly before seeing Professor Jens lunging towards her again. This time, Eclipso stayed where she is, making the professor confused, and slammed her foot into the ground. Professor Jens became surprised when a black wall suddenly appeared out of the ground, and he ran straight into it. Becoming disorientated, Professor Jens stumbled away from the black wall. However, before he could regain his senses, Eclipso rushed out from behind the wall and threw a flurry of punches at Professor Jens. Gah! The snake quirk user exclaimed as Eclipso struck his stomach. So, your quirk is a mutated one? Jens asked as he glanced at the black wall and noticed cracks on it, starting from the point of impact. You're correct, Professor. My quirk allows me to control light, which I use for offense moves, whilst darkness I mainly use for defense. Eclipso explained, causing Professor Jens to frown slightly. Light and darkness. A powerful combination when used correctly, Professor Jens thought before noticing something. Can Eclipso only use her light aspect when there's light in the room and the darkness aspect when there's shadows in the room? Professor Jens thought, seeing that the darkness wall is standing within shadow. If you're not going to make a move, then I will. Eclipso said before charging towards Professor Jens, her entire forearms encased in gauntlets made of light. I need to be careful. Professor Jens thought as he dodged the first punch and prepared to throw one of his own. With the other group of pro heroes, they're having a more easier time than Eclipso, Endeavor and All Might. That's make 20 I caught so far. Captain Smoke muttered as he used his mist-based quirk to create chains, allowing him to tie a group of scientists together. He heard hurrying footsteps, and the pirate-themed hero just had time to turn his to see one of Professor Jens's guards charging towards him. However, before the guard could harm Captain Smoke, a whip tied itself around the bodyguard's waist before it slammed him into the ground, knocking him out. Thanks for the save, Midnight. Captain Smoke said, smiling slightly at the dominatrix-themed hero who was behind him. Thank me afterwards, we still have a job to do. Midnight explained, causing Captain Smoke to nod his head. Where's your lot of captives? Captain Smoke asked, becoming curious. I've handed them to the police already, better to capture a few at a time than before handing them to the police, rather than keeping every single one of them to the end, makes things easier. A few of them tried to attack me with their quirks. Yes, I see, Captain Smoke muttered before hearing groaning from one of the captured scientists. Oh no, go back to sleep with you. Captain Smoke said as mist started to appear out of his body, which formed into a fist. The mist-made fist punched the scientist, effectively knocking him out. Quirk you, sir? Midnight asked, causing Captain Smoke to shrug his shoulders. Don't know. But it better to be safe, right? Captain Smoke asked, causing Midnight to sweat drop slightly. Possibly, Midnight replied in unsure tone of voice. It was then that footsteps can be heard, causing the two heroes to turn their heads to see Eraserhead coming from around a corner. There you two are. How's you two been doing on capturing the people that have been working for Professor Jens? Eraserhead asked as he stopped in front of them. We've been doing fine. Midnight replied, before she and Captain Smoke noticed the group of knocked out people being dragged by Eraserhead with the aid of his scarf. Some have quirks, my eyes are dry from overusing my quirk. Eraserhead explained before taking out some eye drops and applied some. Eraserhead then made a head count of all the knockout people. I think that's everyone, we just need to hand them over to the police. Eraserhead said, causing Captain Smoke to sigh slightly. Missing almost finish. Captain Smoke said in a relieved tone of voice. Don't relax yet, Captain Smoke. Eclipso, Endeavor and All Might are still dealing with Professor Jens, and they may need our help. Midnight explained, causing Captain Smoke to nod his head. I know. Just saying. Captain Smoke said, causing Eraserhead to sigh. After a few minutes of dragging the captives, the three heroes managed to get them outside, and are now being placed on trucks. Good work, you three. You managed to capture them without doing too much harm. The senior police officer, who overlooking the operation, said to the three heroes. Well, we do specialize in capturing villains, that's mainly why we've been chosen for this job. Eraserhead said in a deadpan tone of voice. Yes, certainly. The senior police officer said, with a sheepish tone of voice. Anyway, our specialist team is now gathering information that Professor Jens has been storing within this laboratory. It will be useful to see what he'd been up to for all these years. The senior police officer explained, causing the three heroes to nod their heads. However, it was then that Midnight noticed something out of the corner of her eyes within the trees, just near the entrance of the laboratory. What's that? Midnight asked, looking at the place that caught her attention. This caused Eraserhead, Captain Smoke and the senior police officer to become confused before turning their heads to where Midnight is looking at. The two of them just had time to see something quickly darting away. Professor Jens has a secret bodyguard. Quick, after them. Midnight said, causing both Captain Smoke and Eraserhead to nod their heads before quickly chasing after the escapee. You stay here and wait for the other three with Professor Jens. Midnight explained to the senior police officer, causing him to nod his head before Midnight run after Captain Smoke and Eraserhead. With the escapee, they are running through the trees and due the shadows, the escapee's features can be seen. Finally, I'm free. The escapee thought in a thrilled tone of voice as they ducked under a low-hanging tree branch. The escapee stopped as they reached a clearing that is on an edge of a cliff to rest, and the light of the moon showed their features which seemed to be dragonish-like with green scales, two horns jutting outwards from either side of his head at the back and green eyes. The clothes that the escapee is wearing are slightly dirty. There were those people in those outfits though, they're heroes, but I can't remember their names. The escapee thought with a slight frown on his face. However, the escapee started to hear hurrying footsteps, causing escapee's eyes to widen. I need to hide. The escapee thought, starting to feel fear. The escapee suddenly felt a strange sensation running throughout their body, and when the escapee looked to examine themselves, they saw that their entire body has disappeared. Did I unlock a new aspect of my quirk? The escapee thought as they noticed that they could faintly see their body. However, the escapee suddenly felt a wave of pain as the hurrying footsteps got louder, and the escapee just had time to move into the shadow of a boulder to better hide themselves. A few seconds later, Eraserhead and Captain Smoke burst into the clearing, closely followed by Midnight. Wow, they sure can run fast. Captain Smoke said, smiling slightly under his skull-like mask. Keep your guard up. They may be waiting for a sneak attack. Eraserhead said, glancing around. Do they think that I'm a villain? The escapee thought, becoming scared slightly. If they have enough stamina to run this far, I wonder how much stamina they will have if I do a little torture on them. Midnight wondered, licking her lips slightly. Midnight, can you please keep your thoughts in your head instead of saying them out loud? Captain Smoke asked with a slightly disturbed look under his mask, whilst Eraserhead sighed. The escapee suddenly became more scared. It was then that more hurrying footsteps can be heard, causing the three heroes and the escapee to turn their heads to see the other three heroes arriving. We got the message from the police office that you spotted someone escaping the scene. Endeavor said as he, Eclipso and All Might approach Midnight, Eraserhead and Captain Smoke. Thank you for coming here as fast as possible. We have no idea what we could be up against. Eraserhead said, causing the flame hero to nod his head. Did you have a good look at what this person looks like? All Might asked whilst glancing around. I'd only caught a small glance at the person, but they didn't resemble a normal human. Midnight replied, causing Eclipso to hum slightly. So, they may have a quirk that caused their body to transform, not much to go on. Eclipso said, ready to use the shadow aspect of her quirk if needed. With the escapee, they have excited expression on their face when their eyes fell on All Might. That's All Might, the number one hero. The escapee thought before noticing small sparks on their body, causing them to become confused. What's the escapee began to thought, but stopped when he became visible again, and it was just unfortunate that Captain Smoke is looking at the boulder that the escapee is standing in front of. I spotted them. Captain Smoke exclaimed before using his quirk to create smoky chains that wrapped around the escapee's body. Caught you, villain. Captain said with a victorious smirk behind his smirk. Well done, Captain Smoke. They may be useful in gaining more information. Endeavor said, a smirk present on his face. However, Eclipso has a frown on her face as she notices something. How old are you, escapee? Eclipso asked, saying the last part uncertainly. This caused the others to become confused. What do you mean, Eclipso? Midnight asked before realizing that the escapee has a small body. And 9. The escapee replied in a scared tone of voice, revealing that they are male. This caused all the heroes to become shocked. What is your connection with Professor Jens? Eraserhead asked, gaining the feeling that something isn't what they thought it is. A project that he the professor has been working on. The escapee, causing the 6 heroes to become surprised slightly. Is it a quirk that alters your body or a transformation quirk you possess? Eclipso asked as she examined the dragon body and for some reason, the escapee's voice sounds familiar to her for some reason. A transformation quirk I think. The escapee replied, causing the heroes to glance at each other confusedly. Can you undo your transformation if you say it is? All Might asked, trying to get the escapee to feel at ease. The escapee nodded his head before the dragon-like body started to disappear, revealing a 9-year-old boy with dark green hair. Eclipso's eyes whiten when she recognizes the boy. Izuku. Is it you? Eclipso asked in a shocked tone of voice, causing everyone else to become confused. Do you know the boy, Eclipso? Eraserhead asked with a raised eyebrow, but Eclipso didn't reply as she started to approach the possible named Izuku. Hold on, Eclipso. You need to cautious. Captain Smoke said, but like with Eraserhead, Eclipso ignored him. How do you know my name? The now named Izuku asked, becoming curious as his fears started to disappear. Eclipso removed her helmet, revealing hazel brown eyes and long braided reddish hair. Don't you recognize me? I used to visit you when you were younger. The now unmasked Eclipso explained, causing Izuku to tilt his head to the side. After a few seconds, Izuku's green eyes widened. And when Izuku asked in a shocked tone of voice. The statement caused the other heroes to become surprised. You have a nephew? All Might asked, him knowing the now named Rin said, causing the light darkness quirk user to glance over her shoulder. We're not actually related, but I was friends with Izuku's parents. Rin replied, and the other heroes could tell that the friends part of the reply was kind of forced. With Izuku, the green hair boy's entire body is shaking as he stared at Rin. The aunt is that way? Izuku asked, causing Rin to look back at him. Yes, it's me. Rin began to reply but got interrupted as Izuku suddenly lunged at Rin and hugged her tightly. This caused Rin to smile slightly as Izuku started to cry. The other 5 heroes glanced at each other. Should we leave them alone for a few minutes? Captain Smoke said in a nervous tone of voice, shuffling awkwardly. I agree. From the look of things, they do need some space. Midnight said before realizing something. Oh, yeah. By the way, you deserve this. Midnight said before whacking Captain Smoke on the head. Ouch. What was that for? Captain Smoke exclaimed whilst rubbing the sore part of his head. That's for calling the child a villain. Midnight explained, causing Captain Smoke to freeze slightly. Oh yeah, Captain Smoke replied before starting to feel depressed. This caused All Might to chuckle slightly whilst Endeavor just sighed slightly. With Eraserhead, the Quirk racing hero is frowning slightly. Excuse me, Eraserhead began to say as he began to approach Rin and Izuku. This caused the both of them to look up. How long were you held captive by Professor Jens? Eraserhead asked, causing Izuku to gain a slightly nervous look on his face. Eraser. Don't you think that now's not the right time to be asking Izuku questions? Rin asked, having the feeling that the young boy in her arms have been through a lot. 5 years. Izuku replied quietly, causing everyone's eyes to widen. 5 years, then that means Izuku was captured sometime after she decided to throw him out. Rin thought, anger briefly appearing in her eyes before disappearing. And how did you manage to escape? Eraserhead asked, wanting to clarify something. Some scientist working under Professor Jens was ordered to move me to a different location. I managed to knock him out before making a run for it, Izuku replied before his eyes suddenly closed and went limp in Rin's arms. The adrenaline must have kept the boy going for this long. Midnight said in a thoughtful tone of voice. Why were you asking how he'd escape, Eraserhead? All Might asked, becoming curious. Whilst I was rounding up some scientists and bodyguards, I came across an already knocked out scientist with the name Mustin on his name badge. Lying beside him was a syringe where some of the stuff inside it is missing. Probably a sleeping drug of some sort. Eraserhead explained, causing All Might to nod his head. So, this young boy managed to knock out a fully grown man. Interesting endeavor, muttered in a thoughtful tone of voice. Let's head back now, our mission is complete. Rin said as she put her helmet back on and carried Izuku in both arms. I'm so glad. After so many years of searching I finally found you, Izuku. Eclipso said with a smile on her face as she and the other 5 heroes made their way back to the police. It's been 2 days since the assault mission on Professor Jens's laboratory rescue mission, and Izuku has been placed in a hospital. Rin started to become worried when Izuku hasn't woken up, but the doctor in charge of looking after Izuku said that, like what Eraserhead said, the sleeping drug used on Izuku is a powerful one, stating that if Izuku have taken a full dosage from the syringe, then he would have been knocked out for a long period of time. Currently, the heroes that took part in the mission are in a meeting with the government, along with the principal of UA High, a mouse dog bear person called Nezu. Now then, let's begin the meeting then. The chairperson said, causing the gathered people to murmur in agreement. Thanks to your efforts, heroes, the capturing of Professor Jens and all the people that have been working for him has been a success, along with rescuing a person that Professor Jens has been working on. The chairperson said, causing some people in the room to clap their hands. How's the boy, has he regained consciousness yet? The chairperson asked, turning his attention towards the doctor that has been looking after Izuku. No, the boy is still asleep, and after I examined him, I saw there's been some damage to the boy's body. The doctor explained, causing Eclipso to clench her fists in anger. But I still don't understand how the boy hasn't fallen unconscious due to the sleeping drug immediately though. It like his body built up a resistance to it. The doctor further explained, causing murmurs to be heard. If the boy hasn't woken up yet, I could call a recovery girl to check on him. Nezu said, causing the chairperson to nod his head. Thank you, Mr. Principal. Now, Eclipso, I understand that you have some sort of connection with the boy, can you explain? The chairperson asked, turning his attention towards the light darkness Quirk user who unclenched her fist and took a deep breath. I was an old friend with Izuku Midoriya's parents, and then when he was born, I went and visited him at times when I wasn't on hero duty. He was such a cute boy. Eclipso said, smiling at the last part, causing everyone in the room to chuckle slightly, making Eclipso blush slightly. You said you was friends with the boy's parents. What happened to them? The chairperson asked, and a slightly angry look appeared on Eclipso's face. I stopped seeing Izuku's parents after they decided to get rid of him for being quirkless. Eclipso replied, causing everybody in the room to gain different reactions. Some people become angry that the boy's own parents just decided to get rid of their own child, whilst the others became confused. The chairperson ruffled his notes. But in the report, it said that the boy has a possible transformation quirk. The chairperson said as a frown appeared on Eclipso's face. That is something I still don't understand. Izuku didn't manifest a quirk at the usual age of 4. Eclipso explained, causing some people to glance at each other. He could be a later bloomer, or Professor Jens could have did some experimenting on him. Eraserhead suggested, causing people to murmur in the room. There has been rumors that Professor Jens has been trying to create artificial quirk users. We wouldn't know anything if we don't look at information that we gained from the laboratory. I assume that you are allowing us to see it. Endeavor asked, looking at the chairperson with a frown on his face. Certainly, Endeavor. The chairperson said before gesturing to a black-suited man who has an iPad in his hands. The information gained from the laboratory mostly talks about a project called Project Evil, the black-suited man explained, causing slight confusion to appear in the room. Evil? Short for evolution. Eclipso thought with a small frown on her face. The entries are written by Professor Jens, and has been written across the span of 5 years. The black-suited man explained, causing the chairperson to nod his head, indicating the black-suited man to carry on. Entry 1. The capturing on Izuku Midori went far more smoothly than I thought it would be, being thrown out by his own parents for being quirkless. That part still confuses me. Why did Master Xander wanted me to experiment on the boy is a complete mystery. The only piece of information I've got from Master Xander is to draw out his full potential. The black-suited man read the first entry, causing the room to start buzzing with talk. So the kidnapping of the boy wasn't random, and Professor Jens is working for someone at the time. This is troublesome. Nezu said, causing everybody in the room to agree with him. Entry 2. It's been a week since kidnapping Izuku Midoriya, and nothing interesting has come up, but Master Xander said that I need to be patient and have faith in him. The black-suited man continued to read, causing the room to curious. Entry 3. After another 2 weeks, something happened at last. I let Izuku Midoriya make contact with a deadly poison that would surely kill him. Professor Jens did what Eclipso exclaimed, interrupting the black-suited man as the light darkness Quirk user stood up, fury in her eyes. Please calm down, Eclipso. This part sounds important. Captain Smoke said in a calm tone of voice, causing Eclipso to look at him, still with fury in her eyes. After a few seconds, Eclipso let out a big sigh and sat back down. Instead of killing him, Izuku Midoriya's quirk manifested, causing him to undergo a transformation and becoming resistant to the poison, even though he has an extra joint in toe, meaning that he shouldn't have manifested a quirk at all. But I don't understand the sudden transformation of his body. I haven't found any link with the poison resistance at all. When I asked Masters Ander about this, he just said to focus on improving his newly awakened power. The black-suited person continued, causing everyone to look at each other. Did you saw Midoriya's transformed state when you encounter him? The chairperson asked, looking at the heroes that were on the mission. Yes, it was dragon-like with dark green scales, the color probably due to his hair color. Midnight began to say before a thought entered her head. Midnight, is there something wrong? The chairperson asked, looking at the black-haired heroine. Well, Midoriya somehow gained the ability to turn invisible when we were chasing after him. Midnight replied, causing everybody to become curious. We better carry on with hearing the entries, we could find some clues in there. Eraserhead suggested, causing everybody to nod their heads. Entry 4. After more testing, I discovered that Midoriya's quirk allows him to evolve his body to suit the environment he's in, such as when we place him in a room with extreme heat, his scales will turn rock-like to reflect the heat, or placing him in a room with extreme cold temperatures will cause him to grow fur. However, he can only keep one change at a time. The black-suited man read out, causing everybody to become impressed. That's a useful quirk, All Might said, causing everybody in the room to agree with him. Entry 5. I've hit a problem. The changing rate that Midoriya's quirk, which I named evolution, can undertake is slow. Since Master Xander is away most of the time, I can't get any advice from him. So, I have to increase the changing rate by force. The black-suited person said, causing the people to gain disapproving looks on their faces. Forcing newly awakened quirks is extremely dangerous. I thought that some like Professor Jens would know that. Eraserhead with arms crossed, causing everyone to nod their heads. Entry 6. Master Xander is pleased with the growth of Midoriya's quirk that have taken in the course of the years. I'm not sure if he knows that I've been forcing the growth rate, and he told me that Project Evil is almost ready for the next phase. That's all the entries that Professor Jens has written. The date shows that it was a few days before assault. The black-suited man explained, causing the chairperson to nod his head. Thank you, Mr. Rico. The chairperson said as he focused his attention back to the other people in the room. We're still in the dark though, especially with this second phase that Professor Jens mentions and this Master's Ander character. Endeavor said, causing everyone to nod their heads. Let's discuss the things that we know so far, such as Midoriya's evolution quirk. Principal Nezu said, causing people to murmur in agreement. From what Professor Jens has written down, young Midoriya has free control over what changes he could make, and I'm guessing that the change will disappear when Midoriya undergoes a new evolution. Midnight suggested in a thoughtful tone of voice. It could also explain how he turned invisible. Young Midoriya could have evolved his body to turn invisible. All Might suggested, causing some people to frown slightly. Do you think it more like camouflaging? Turning invisible doesn't seem to sound right with evolution. Eraserhead pointed out, causing All Might to gain a thoughtful look on his face before nodding his head slightly. But what sort of effect will these evolutions have on Midoriya's body? I doubt that by now Midoriya's quirk is stable. Midnight said, causing the people in the room to murmur. We certainly need to do some tests when Midoriya wakes up to see how stable his quirk is. Principal Nezu said, causing everybody to nod their heads in agreement. So, what about this Ander character? From what I could tell, he is the one who is mainly in charge of Project Evil. Endeavor asked, causing everyone to nod their heads. Indeed, but from what Professor Jens has written down, Mr. Xander hasn't told him everything, just the pieces that are needed for this project. The chairperson said whilst clasping his hands together. I guess that Xander knows something about Midoriya that he doesn't want Professor Jens to know, probably wanting to keep it a secret in case the professor gets captured. Eraserhead said, causing the room to become silent. Do you have any idea, Eclipso? Like what you said, you know Midoriya personally. The chairperson asked Eclipso, who is frowning under her helmet. The only thing I can think of is that Izuku was born 3 months into Inko's pregnancy, the boy's mother. Eclipso replied, explaining who Inko is to the people in the room. This caused the chairperson to sigh slightly. That's not very much to go. The chairperson said, slightly depressed. That's not entirely true. There's still Midoriya's transformed state. Professor Jens himself couldn't find a link between the transformed state and the evolution abilities. Principal Nezu pointed out, causing the chairperson to nod his head slightly. True. But it's not very much we can go on at this point in time. The chairperson explained, causing Principal Nezu to nod his head slightly. Do you think that the boy might know something about Xander? Endeavor asked, causing the chairperson to nod his head slowly. Maybe, but I doubt Eclipso here will allow us to question Midoriya at this point in time. The chairperson said, causing the light darkness quirk user to nod her head in agreement. So, the next topic we must address is what to do with Midoriya. The chairperson said, causing the people in the room to glance at each other. Well, he's not going back to his parents, that I will make sure of. Eclipso said in a tone of voice that made very clear that there's no room for discussion. That I understand from what you told us. The chairperson said, causing the people in the room to nod their heads in agreement. And I doubt that Midoriya will like being kept under government watch, being captive for 5 years. Midnight said, crossing her arms. Yes. That's true, the chairperson muttered in a thoughtful tone of voice before thinking deeply. After a few minutes, an idea appeared within the chairperson's head. Eclipso, why don't you take care of Midoriya? The chairperson asked, causing the light darkness quirk user to become surprised under her helmet. Are you serious? Eclipso asked in a surprised tone of voice, causing a smile to appear on the chairperson's face. Certainly. I think it's best since you know him personally. The chairperson replied, causing a smile to appear on Eclipso's face. Then I'll accept. Eclipso said, becoming excited, causing the chairperson to nod his head. Thank you, Eclipso. But please report to us if anything does happen to Midoriya in regards with his quirk. The chairperson explained, causing Eclipso to nod her head. The meeting has finished and Eclipso, now in her civilian clothes, is about to leave the building. Rin? A voice called, causing Rinzwen to turn around to see a man with blonde hair and blue eyes approaching. Toshinori. Is there something wrong? Rin asked as the true form of All Might approached her. I was wondering something. Before Midoriya found out that he was quirkless, did he wanted to become a hero? Toshinori asked, causing Rin to blink at him for a few seconds before chuckling slightly. Yes, he did. You were a big inspiration for him when he saw you in action on the TV. Rin explained, causing Toshinori to smile slightly whilst glancing around nervously. Why are you asking? Rin asked, raising an eyebrow. I was just wondering, that's all. He would make a great hero with that quirk of his. Toshinori explained, causing Rin to nod her head. Yes, I'll see you around, Toshinori. Rin said before starting to exit the building. Rinzwen is over the moon. This is because she received word that Izuku has regained conciseness and went to the hospital the minute she finished her hero duties. I wonder what I should say to him. It's been 5 years since we have a proper conversation. Rin thought as a small frown on her face. How long have you been here? A voice asked, causing Rin to jump slightly before turning her head to the side to see a male with black hair and eyes approaching her. Mr. Izawa. What are you doing here? Rin asked, confused as to see the erasure quirk user. I've been asked to come to the hospital in case Midoriya's quirk decided to become out of control, hurting him even more. Shota explained, causing Rin to nod her head. I see, that makes sense. Rin muttered in a thoughtful tone of voice. How long have you been waiting here? Shota asked, glancing around the waiting area. 2 hours maybe, Rin replied, becoming sheepish. Shota stared at her for a few seconds before sighing. You're that excited to see Midoriya again? Shota, causing Rin to nod her head. Of course. I've been spending the past 5 years trying to find Izuku. Rin replied, causing Shota to raise an eyebrow. You were planning on adopting Midoriya when you found him? Shota asked, causing Rin to nod her head. Absolutely, I was surprised and happy when the chairperson said that I can look after him. Rin explained with a smile on her face. How did you begin your search for Midoriya? Shota asked, crossing his arms. Well, my search started when I found out that Izuku got kicked out by his parents and placed in a foster home. Rin began to explain. Flashback. I wonder how Izuku is feeling. He must be feeling devastated. A younger Rin thought as she approaches the Midoriya residence. I know that I should have been here sooner, but there was a huge spike of villain activities that need to be dealt with. Rin thought again, feeling frustrated that she hasn't had the chance to visit Izuku within 2 months. I wonder if Rin asked herself as she pressed the doorbell. After a few seconds, the door opened, revealing a woman with long dark green hair and green eyes. This is a surprise. Inko, Midoriya said with a surprised expression on her face. Hi Inko. Sorry if I couldn't be sooner. Was kept busy with hero duties. Rin explained as Inko let the light darkness quirk user into the Midoriya's residence. I understand. It said in the news that was big increase of villain activities within the city. Inko said in an understanding tone of voice. How's Izuku? He must be devastated, right? Rin asked, causing Inko to become tense slightly. Yes, he was at the time, Inko said in a tense tone of voice, something that caused Rin to raise an eyebrow. Is Izuku in his room? Rin asked, seeing that the dark green hair boy isn't in the living room. Inko didn't say anything as she became nervous, something that caused Rin to become suspicious. The light darkness quirk user turned her head towards the door that would lead to Izuku's room and noticed something. Where's the name tag that is usually hanging on the door? Rin asked, glancing her behind her shoulder. Inko became quiet, causing Rin to frown before walking over to Izuku's bedroom door and opened it. Her eyes widen when she how bare the room is. All the All Might merchandise that Izuku has collected have disappeared. Rin started to gain a nasty feeling in her stomach. Inko, where's Izuku? Rin said, trying to stay calm. I will. Izuku is, answered the question, Inko. Rin shouted, turning around and glared at Inko. The dark green hair woman gained an upset look on her face. I'm sorry. After Izuku is diagnosed as quirkless, Hisahi left, and people started to say what weak genes I have, not being able to pass minor Hisashi's quirk onto Izuku. I couldn't handle the pressure any longer. I'm sorry. Inko explained as she started to cry, referring to her husband. However, Rin has an emotionless expression on her face. Where did you took him? Rin asked in an emotionless tone of voice. Flashback. I immediately went to the orphanage that Izuku was taken, but the staff there said that he disappeared. Rin explained as Shota has an unreadable expression on his face throughout the examination. Did the staff say anything that could be a link to Midoriya's kidnapping? Shota asked, causing Rin to shake her head slightly. No, they said that Izuku was alone when he disappeared. Rin explained, causing Shota to sigh. The staff at that orphanage are supposed to look after the children. They're not doing a good job if they're neglecting their duties. Shota said whilst shaking his head. Miss Wen? A voice said, causing both heroes to turn their heads to see a doctor approaching them. Hello, Dr. Steven. Rin greeted as she stood up. Are you here to visit Midoriya? Dr. Steven asked, he being the one looking after Izuku whilst his time in hospital. That's correct. I've been waiting here for 2 hours. Rin said with a smile on her face. Dr. Steven stared at her for a few seconds before shaking his head whilst chuckling slightly. Glad to see that you're excited then. Dr. Steven said before looking over at Shota. Mr. Ozawa, what are you doing here? Dr. Steven asked, clearly surprised to see the racing hero. I've been asked to come here in case Midoriya's quirk decided to go uncontrolled. Shota replied, causing Dr. Steven to nod his head. Yes, I understand why. I've heard that Midoriya's quirk was getting improved by force. Most of his body is damaged because of that. Dr. Steven explained, causing both Rin's and Shota's eyes to widen. Can you please take us to Izuku? Rin asked, starting to feel agitated. Certainly. Dr. Steven replied before heading in a direction, Rin and Shota following him. After a few minutes of wandering the hospital, the three of them entered a ward. When the light darkness quirk user saw a boy with dark green hair and green eyes, a big smile appeared on her face. Izuku! Rin exclaimed before suddenly diving towards the green hair boy. Entering Ga! Izuku suddenly yelped as Rin started to hug him tightly. Luckily, Izuku is resting within a private room so little attention got drawn their way. Oh, Izuku. Do you know how worried I was when I found out that you suddenly disappeared from the orphanage? I've been searching for you for the last 5 years. Rin explained as she stepped away slightly, eyes glinting slightly. Miss Wen, I think it's best if you treat Midoriya gently, he's still healing, remember? Dr. Steven asked, causing Rin to pout slightly, but nodded her head. You've been searching for me? Izuku asked with a questioning look on his face. Of course, I have. Why shouldn't I have? Rin asked with a smirk on her face. Izuku started to smile. I'm just glad that's all. Izuku replied, however, Rin noticed something. That smile it's different from the ones that he usually have. Rin thought as she stared at the smile. The light darkness quirk user realized that Izuku is broken on the inside. Professor Jens, what have you been doing to Izuku? Rin muttered rhetorically, a hand clenched slightly. It was then that Rin noticed that Izuku is staring at Shota. Izuku. This man here is Shota Ozawa, he's also known as the Hero Racerhead. Rin introduced Izuku to Shota, causing the green hair boy's eyes to widen. I've heard about you. Your quirk allows you to remove the quirk of anyone in your line of vision. Izuku said, and for the first time, Shota smirked slightly. You certainly know your stuff, kid. Despite being held captive for 5 years. Shota said, however, this caused Izuku to feel depressed. I've heard people at the laboratory speaking about you, Izuku explained as Rin glared at Shota, causing the racing hero to take a step back slightly. The light darkness quirk user took a deep breath to calm herself down, and turned back to look at Izuku. How are you feeling, Izuku? Rin asked as she notices the bandages on Izuku's body. I'm feeling okay, just a few pains here and there. Izuku replied, causing a smile to appear on Rin's face. That's good to hear. Rin said before taking a deep breath, knowing what the next question she would ask will be hard for the young boy. Izuku, what happened to you on the day that you got kidnapped? Rin asked, causing Shota and Dr. Steven to glance at her slightly. Well, I wouldn't call it a kidnapping, Izuku said quietly, causing the two adults, Dr. Steven already left the room, to become confused. Flashback. The younger Izuku can be seen sitting by himself under a bridge that next to the orphanage. He'd been there for 2 weeks now, and the only emotion that he felt mostly these days is bitterness. The reason for this, he felt angry towards his mother who decided to abandon him. Izuku kind of understand why she did it, with all the pressure, but he still felt angry at the fact that Inko Midoriya decided to abandon her own child. Better head back inside. The caretakers will probably be wondering where I am. Izuku thought as he stood up and started to head back to the orphanage. To be honest, Izuku hated the place and can't wait to get away from it. But he wondered what will happen to him afterwards. Those who are born as quirkless will absolutely find it difficult to have any sort of life. The public finding those with quirks will be more suitable for a job that their quirks will be good for. Most suicides nowadays are usually caused by quirkless people because they can't cope with the life that they lead. As Izuku took a few steps, the dark green hair boy started to hear something move behind him. He turned around and became wide-eyed when he saw two people, one looking like a spider and the other a crocodile. Darn. I thought that we would be able to sneak up on him quietly. The crocodile Quirk user said in a disgruntled tone of voice. Well, maybe if you were quieter, the boy wouldn't have heard us. The spider Quirk user said to the crocodile Quirk user, shooting him a glare. You're saying it's my fault then the crocodile Quirk user asked in an angry tone of voice. As the two Quirk users argued, Izuku started to back away from the two. Why are they doing here? They don't look friendly at all. Izuku thought as he examines the two. Maybe I could run to the orphanage and warn them. Izuku thought again as he took a step backwards. Oh, no, you don't. The spider Quirk user said before suddenly shooting white silk out of one of his spider legs. Izuku could say anything as the white silk wrapped around him, including covering his mouth. Izuku fell on the ground and started to move about, trying to break himself free. There's no point in trying to break free. That silk is like iron when dries. So, if you don't have a super strength quirk, then you're completely stuck here. The crocodile Quirk user said with a wide smirk on his face. This caused the spider Quirk user to sigh angrily before whacking the crocodile Quirk user on the head. You have to tell the kid that. The spider Quirk user said angrily. What? It's not like the kid can do anything against the two of us. And anyway, he will be dead soon. The crocodile Quirk user explained, causing Izuku's eyes to widen with fear. Don't worry, kid. You won't be the only one. All the other kids at the orphanage will die along with you. I will make sure that your death will be painless as possible. The crocodile Quirk user said as he crouched down to Izuku's height, and the green hair boy began to squirm in his bindings. Is this how I will die? Izuku thought as he watched the crocodile raise a clawed hand into the air. But then again, what's the point of living if I'm quirkless? I will be completely useless, just like what Kakin always said. Izuku thought, thinking about his former friend. Izuku relaxed and closed his eyes, waiting for the crocodile Quirk user's clawed hand to take his life. Gah! The spider Quirk user suddenly exclaimed. This caused Izuku to open his eyes, and the crocodile Quirk user to turn his head to see the spider Quirk user slumped against the wall where some of the stones is cracked slightly. Standing in the place when the spider Quirk user was previously, is a man with short dark brown hair and indigo eyes. His right leg is in the air, indicating that he kicked the spider Quirk user into the wall. Zzz, villains these days are sure lacking in confidence, deciding to kill children. The indigo eyes man said with a small smirk on his face. Why you? The crocodile Quirk user exclaimed in an angry tone of voice before lunging at the man. However, the indigo eyes male quickly moved out of the way and elbowed the crocodile Quirk user in the back when he passed him. The crocodile stumbled slightly before falling onto the ground, just as the spider Quirk user regained consciousness. Hozo! The spider Quirk user exclaimed before shooting silk at the indigo male. However, the spider Quirk user, the now named Hozo and Izuku, became shocked when a dark indigo aura covered the indigo eyes male's hand, before swiping it towards the silk, completely destroying it. Why you're a Quirk user? The spider Quirk user exclaimed in a shocked tone of voice. The question caused the indigo eyes male to hum slightly. Maybe. The indigo eyes male replied while smirking. It doesn't matter if you're a Quirk user or not. Let's get him, Lozo. Hozo said to the now named Lozo, causing him to nod his head in agreement before the two of them lunged at the indigo eyes man. Both Quirk users draw their hands back, ready to punch the indigo male. However, the indigo eyes male easily caught their fists, causing Hozo and Lozo to become shocked. Come on, now. Surely you can do more than that. The indigo male asked mockingly, causing both animal Quirk users to growl in anger. Who is this guy? A hero. Izuku thought, still tied up, as he watched the indigo eyes male fought Hozo and Lozo with ease. After a few minutes, both Hozo and Lozo are beaten badly and panting heavily. I must admit, you two sure put up a better fight than I expected. The indigo eyes male commented, examining himself and saw his damaged clothes small scratches. But then again, if I had my full power available then that would be different story. The indigo male said, causing Hozo's, Lozo's and Izuku's eyes to widen with shock. Lol Lozo. I think best if we SC scram. Hozo said in a shaky tone of voice, dread entering the crocodile Quirk user's body. Why yeah. The spider Quirk user agreed, also in a shaky tone of voice. The both of them turned around and were about to leg it, but stopped when two hands grabbed them by their shoulders. Really now? Do you really think that it is wise decision to turn your back on the enemy? The indigo eyes male asked, a smirk appearing on his lips. Before the two Quirk users could do anything, the indigo eyes male turned them around sharply, and with both of his fists getting covered with a dark indigo aura again, and punched the two of them in the stomach. Ozo and Lozo both cough up blood as the two of them stumbled backwards. What the heck are you? Hozo asked, gaining a strange feeling in his stomach from where the indigo eyes male punched him. You don't need to know actual. The indigo eyes male replied before the dark indigo aura around his hands grew bigger, and he threw the now spheres of dark indigo aura at Hozo and Lozo, causing the both of them to be consumed by the dark indigo aura like fire, and the two of them to shriek in pain. Izuku's eyes whiten in horror as he watched Hozo's and Lozo's body disappearing. The indigo eyes male stared at the place where the two Quirk wielders were before letting out a deep sigh. Finally, those two are out of the way. The indigo eyes male said before turning around and looked down at Izuku. The dark green hair boy started to shuffle backwards and try to make noise, attempting to call someone. Calm down, would you? At least until I can uncover your mouth. The indigo male said as he crouched down to Izuku's height, causing the dark green hair boy to become confused slightly. One of the indigo eyes male's hands started to gain a faint dark indigo aura, which he placed on the silk that covers Izuku's. Izuku felt the silk disappearing. He became curious about the dark indigo aura. Curious about this? The indigo eyes male asked, noticing that Izuku is staring at the dark red aura. The indigo eyes male chuckled slightly when Izuku jumped slightly. This energy is similar to that of a black hole, young Midoriya. The indigo eyes male explained, causing Izuku to nod his head slightly before realizing something. How do you know my name? Izuku asked, speaking for the first time, causing the indigo eyes male to smile slightly. I know a few things about Izuku Midoriya, such as you being sent to this orphanage, because your mother could handle the pressure of having a child that, in today's society, is considered disabled. The indigo eyes male said, and a frown appeared on Izuku's forehead. Oh yeah. I haven't told you my name. My name is Xander Krom. The now named Xander said, causing Izuku to nod his head. Xander then glanced towards the orphanage. You know, the caretakers will be wondering where you were at this point. Xander commented, causing a scowl to appear on Izuku's face. Now, you don't need to give me that look. I know that you absolutely hate the place. You may be wondering why I came here. Xander asked, causing a confused look to appear on Izuku's face. Didn't you just happen to see those two Quirk users trying to kill me? Izuku asked, causing Xander to chuckle slightly. No, that was just coincidental. The real reason I came here is to take you away from this place. Xander said, causing Izuku to stare at him with eyes full of disbelief. Yes. You have so much potential, young Izuku, Xander said before placing a hand on Izuku's forehead. The next thing that Izuku knew of falling into darkness. Flashback. The next thing I knew is being at that laboratory and being experimented on. Izuku finished explaining and Rin and Shota glanced at each other with knowing looks. Is there something wrong? Izuku asked, tilting his head to the side as he noticed the looks. It's nothing for yourself to worry about, kid, but some of the files that we retrieved from the laboratory did mention someone called Xander. So, you kind of help us with describing him. Shota explained, causing Izuku to smile nervously. Did you happen to see Xander during your time in captivity? Rin asked, becoming nervous slightly as she didn't want to ask Izuku questions. I did see him at times, talking to the professor about my quirk's progress. Izuku explained, causing Rin and Shota to look at each other. How painful is your quirk when you used it? Shota asked, causing a discomfort look to appear on Izuku's face. It's hurt a lot. Izuku replied, causing Rin to feel angry towards Professor Jens. Well, once you're discharged from the hospital, we'll fix that problem so that you can use your quirk without hurting yourself. Rin said with a smile on her face. What will happen to me when I get discharged from the hospital, Aunt? Izuku asked, fearing the worst. From now on, Izuku, you will be living with me. Rin replied as her smile grew bigger. Oh really? Izuku asked in a shocked tone of voice, causing Rin to nod her head. Absolute gah. Rin began to say but exclaimed when Izuku hugged her tightly. Shota looked at the two with a small smile on his face. Line break. Deep within a prison, Professor Jens sat in his cell. Why did I end up like this? If it wasn't him, I wouldn't end up in prison. Professor Jens muttered slightly angrily. Hello Jens. How does prison life suit you? A voice asked, causing Professor Jinus to look up from his cup hands to see a male with dark brown hair and indigo eyes standing on the other side of the bars. Xander, Professor Jens said in a shocked tone of voice. Yep. The one and only. Xander said with a smirk on his face. Oh, smirk all you want. Look at the mess I'm in. Professor Jens said as he stood up and walked over to the bars. That's not my fault. It was your android that lead the heroes and police to the laboratory. Xander explained with raised arms in surrender. I guess that's true. Professor Jens said in a disgruntled tone of voice. And anyway, you should be thankful. If it wasn't for me, you would have ending up in prison a long time ago. Xander pointed out, causing Professor Jens to nod his head begrudgingly. I think that's the only way I could have helped you with Project Evil. Professor Jens muttered, causing Xander to smile. Bingo. Xander said in an enthusiastic tone of voice. This caused Professor Jens to sigh slightly. Don't act like that. You were the only one in the country that I could think of that could help me with unlocking Izuku's power, even if you have to use force. Xander explained and Professor Jens's eyes widened. Why you knew? Professor Jens asked, completely shocked. I did from the start. I didn't say anything because Earth's environment is unsuitable for Izuku's evolution abilities' growth to be normal. Xander explained, causing Professor Jens to become confused. Anyway, Project Evil is finished. I've been told that the boy has been recovered by the heroes. Professor Jens explained, changing the subject because he knew that Xander will avoid the question that Professor Jens wanted to ask. I know. Xander said, causing Professor Jens to raise an eyebrow. You don't seem upset about it. Professor Jens pointed out, causing Xander to shrug his shoulders. Well, young Izuku will need to be trained so that his powers won't hurt him when he uses them, and for the supposed second phase of Project Evil, I will make sure that that's completed. Xander explained, causing Professor Jens to nod his head. By the way, have you been interrogated yet? Xander asked, causing Professor Jens to shake his head. No, the only pieces of information they will know is the stuff that I've written down. Which is vague because you told me to. Professor Jens explained, causing Xander to nod his head. Good. Xander said before suddenly Professor Jens felt a sharp pain in his chest. The professor looked down to see a dagger embedded in his chest. Professor Jens looked up at Xander as pain spread throughout his body. Why? Professor Jens asked weakly. I'm sorry, Professor Jens, but it would be better if I silence you. You know the saying, dead man tells no tales. Thank you, Professor, for all your hard work. Xander said as Professor Jens's eyes closed and he fell onto the ground. Xander stared at the dead body for a few seconds before pulling the dagger out of the professor's chest, the blade covered in blood, yet the white mineral that the blade is made of can still, yet faintly, be seen. Things will become more exciting in the future, my little legacy. Xander said before mysteriously disappearing. It's been 5 years since Izuku has been rescued from Professor Jens's laboratory, and he is slowly getting used to normal life. Like what Rin said, Izuku is being looked after by her, and the dark green hair boy became surprised slightly when he found out that she moved residence. Rin explained to Izuku that she moved sometime after his disappearance from the orphanage, saying that she wanted to get away from the Incomat area. However, an issue that Izuku encountered is that he's antisocial. He figured out that his time being held captive caused him to become distant towards others. Rin hoped that Izuku can overcome this issue, saying that heroes are needed to be social to help the citizens. Speaking about heroes, Izuku's quirk is still causing him pain, and he and Rin have been doing their best in trying to get rid of the pain, but it's a slow process. Another thing that caused the light-darkness quirk user to become worried is the nightmares that Izuku suffers on a regular basis. Rin knew that Izuku will suffer from nightmares, but she never knew that it would this bad. She was tempted to get into contact with the R-rated hero. Midnight, his quirk allows her to put people to sleep, thinking she would be able to stop Izuku from having nightmares. Currently, Izuku is at the National Museum of Science and is in the astrology section, looking at a genuine meteor that some scientists decided to give half of it to the museums. Such a strange interior. Izuku thought as he stared at the whitish metal crystal-like mineral that were in the meteor, currently being displayed in front of the meteor. Are you interested in the rare meteor as well? A voice suddenly asked, causing Izuku to jump in surprise. Turning around, Izuku's eyes fell on a girl with short brown hair and matching eyes. Why yes, I am. Izuku replied, stuttering slightly. The brown-haired girl giggled slightly. Sorry for making you jump. The brown-haired girl said with a smile on her face. It's okay. Izuku said, calming down slightly. Alright then. The brown-haired girl said before silence descended around the two of them. After a few seconds of silence, Izuku realized something. Have I seen you before? Izuku asked, frowning slightly, and the brown-haired girl tilted her head to the side slightly. Now that you mentioned it, you do look familiar yourself. The brown-haired girl replied as a deep-thinking expression appeared on her face. After a few seconds, something clicked within Izuku's mind. Do you attend Region Middle School by any change? Izuku asked, causing the brown-haired girl to nod her head, before her eyes suddenly widened. That's right. You're in a different class as me. The brown-haired girl said, causing Izuku to nod his head as he started to remember. My name is Izuku by the way. Izuku introduced himself to the girl. It was agreed sometime after Izuku started to live with Rin, that the dark green hair boy's surname should be changed. However, Izuku still called Rin Aunt, something that made the light darkness sad slightly. The brown-haired girl started to giggle. What sort of name is when are you half German? The brown-haired girl asked, still giggling. This caused Izuku to scratch the back of his head. My aunt's half German, can you please stop giggling? Izuku asked, starting to feel uncomfortable. Sorry. My name is Ichako Uraraka. Nice to meet you, Swen. The now named Ichako introduced herself to Izuku once she stopped giggling with a bright smile on her face. Be beautiful, Izuku thought, blushing slightly. So, what are you doing here? Ichako asked, starting up a conversation. Huh? Oh, I'm just looking at the rare meteor like what you said. This is my first time seeing it actually. Izuku replied, scratching the back of his head. I've been here before, but I just like to see the meteor, especially those whitish metal-like material. Ichako explained, causing Izuku to nod his head. I know what you mean, they are an interesting mineral, Izuku said before frowning slightly as he stared at the rocks, something that Ichako noticed. Is something wrong, Swen? Ichako asked, her head tilting her head to the side. It's nothing to worry about, but I just have a strange feeling of familiarity about those metal crystal. Izuku replied, causing Ichako to gain a confused look on her face. That's strange. It said on the small board over there that the scientists that gave the museum half of the meteor said that the mineral are made of an unknown compound and also produce some sort of energy. Ichako explained, causing Izuku to gain a surprised look on his face. Really? Izuku asked, becoming interested just as a thought entered his head. Well, that does kind of make sense, since it's rock that came from outer space. Izuku muttered in a thoughtful tone of voice. Yeah, that's true. Ichako said, managing to hear what Izuku said. But it doesn't explain my sense of familiarity about those whitish metal though. Izuku said, frowning slightly. Ichako hummed slightly. Maybe you came from space as well. Ichako joked, causing Izuku to laugh, and a few seconds later, Ichako joined in. The meteor crashed onto Earth 20 years ago if you're wondering. Ichako pointed out once she stopped laughing. Oh, thank you Uraraka. Izuku said, smiling slightly. You're welcome. Ichako said, smiling as well. Silence surrounded the two again. Are you by yourself or with others? Izuku asked, feeling awkward slightly. I'm with my parents, they are in a different section of the museum, though. What about you? Ichako asked, becoming curious. I'm with my aunt. She was called here today to increase security because of some new pieces that is arriving to the museum. Izuku explained, causing Ichako to nod her head with interest. Does your aunt work at the museum? Ichako asked, becoming curious. No, she's a pro hero. Izuku replied, causing Ichako's eyes to whiten. Really, what's her name? Ichako asked, causing Izuku to glance around slightly before leaning into Ichako, causing the brown-hair girl to blush slightly. Her name is Eclipso. Izuku whispered in Ichako's ear, causing the brown hair to become confused slightly as Izuku pulled away. Eclipso, I think I've heard about that hero. She uses a light-darkness-based quirk, right? Ichako asked, slightly unsurely, causing Izuku to nod his head. That's right. The good combination of attacking and defending. Izuku commented, causing Ichako to nod her head, slightly surprised at the analysis. Izuku, who are you talking to? A voice asked, causing both Izuku and Ichako to turn their heads to see Rin approaching them. Hey Aunt Rin, have you finished your job? Izuku asked, surprised to see the light-darkness quirk user. Yes, I have. The new museum pieces are safely stored away. Rin explained before her attention towards Ichako. And who's this young lady, a new friend you're making? Rin asked, a small smirk appearing on her face. Izuku started to blush slightly. Aunt Rin, this is Ichako Uraraka. She also attends Rijin Middle School. Izuku introduced Ichako to Rin, causing the light-darkness quirk user to become surprised slightly. And why haven't you mentioned this girl to me before when she attends the same school as you? Rin asked, raising an eyebrow. She's in a different class as me. Izuku replied, feeling slightly embarrassed. This caused Rin to nod her head slightly before focusing her attention towards Ichako. Hello Uraraka. It's nice to see that Izuku is making new friends. Rin said with a warm smile on her face. Aunt? Izuku exclaimed, feeling more embarrassed. However, Rin ignored him. It's a pleasure, Miss Wen, your nephew told me a bit about yourself actual. Ichako said, causing Rin to glance at Izuku who nodded his head slightly. Oh, really? And what has Izuku been telling you about me? Rin asked, becoming curious. Ichako glanced around, making sure that no one around them is within hearing. Zwen said that you're the pro hero, Eclipso. Ichako replied in a quiet tone of voice, causing Rin to glance at Izuku with slightly pursed lips. Sorry. Izuku said in depressed tone of voice. However, Rin shook her head. It's okay, Izuku. Uraraka seems to be a trustworthy person. Rin said, causing Izuku to sigh in relief, and Ichako smiled slightly. However, it was then that Ichako noticed two people. My mom and dad are here, I should get going. Bye Zwen. Ichako said as she started to head towards her parents whilst waving at Izuku. Bye, Uraraka, Izuku said before gaining a slightly depressed look on his face. Rin noticed this and gave the dark green hair boy a sympathetic look. Don't worry, Izuku. You did say that Uraraka goes to the same school as you, didn't you? Rin asked, causing Izuku to nod his head. Then there's no need to become upset, you can see your friend again. Rin said, causing Izuku to nod his head before realizing something. I just made my first friend in a long time, Izuku thought, becoming surprised slightly. It's the first day back at school at Ochako is currently walking through the hallways. Where can I find Swen? It can't be that hard to find a boy with dark green hair. Ochako thought, starting to gain the idea that she should ask someone if they see Izuku. However, this idea disappeared when she notices a boy with dark green hair sitting on a bench outside. There he is. Ochako thought, a smile appearing on her face before starting to head in the direction of Izuku. With the green hair boy, Izuku is writing something down in a notebook. That's Villain's quirk, drill, is mostly useful for escaping, but is it possible that he could focus his quirk onto his arms, rather than on his legs, possibly making him able to destroy any sort of defense? Izuku thought as he wrote notes down. Hi Swen. A cheerful Ochako greeted, causing Izuku to jump. Gah! Izuku exclaimed, jumping a few feet of the bench and drop his notebook. A few students looked in their direction but ignored them. Oh? Hi Uraraka. Izuku said, causing Ochako to giggle slightly. Sorry for making you jump. Ochako said in an apologetic tone of voice. It's just like back at the museum. Izuku said, causing Ochako to blink a few times. Oh yeah. History repeating itself. Ochako said, before giggling again, causing Izuku to giggle as well. It was then that Ochako noticed the dropped notebook. Let me get that for you. Ochako said before picking the notebook up. Thank you. Izuku said nervously, scratching the side of his cheek. No problem. Ochako said in an enthusiastic tone of voice as she hands the notebook out to Izuku. Quirk Analysis for the Future. Volume 4. Ochako read the title before giving Izuku a raised eyebrow, as the dark green hair boy picked up the notebook. Yeah, I like to analysis people's quirks, Izuku explained, mumbling slightly. That's an interesting hobby. Never seen anyone doing that before. Ochako said, causing Izuku to chuckle slightly. Yeah, I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to quirks. Izuku said quietly, but Ochako heard him. Well, it just shows that you have a keen eye for detail. Ochako said before sitting down next to Izuku, causing the dark green hair boy to start blushing. She's sitting too close. She's sitting too close. Izuku repeated in his head as he started to panic slightly. Swen, are you okay? Ochako asked, tilting her head to the side. Why yeah. CC completely fine. Izuku exclaimed, causing Ochako to nod her head slowly. Okay, if you say so, Ochako said slowly, becoming worried slightly. Do you have a quirk of your own, Uraraka? Izuku asked, starting up a conversation. Yes. My quirk is called Zero Gravity. It allows me to remove the gravitational pull of anything I touch through these small pads on the tips of my fingers. Ochako explained, showing Izuku her fingertips where pink pads can be seen. That's interesting, Izuku said before quickly opening a page of quirk analysis for the future and starting to write notes. Ochako stared at him for a few seconds before giggling slightly. Oh? I should have asked you first. Izuku said, abruptly stopped writing. No, it's okay. Keep writing. Ochako replied, causing Izuku to nod his head before starting to write again. I can use my quirk to lift anything that is within 3 tons, and if I use it too much I can become nauseous. Ochako explained, causing Izuku to nod his head as he wrote more notes down. Can you use your quirk on yourself, making yourself run faster or jump higher, Uraraka? Izuku asked, causing Ochako to smile sheepishly. I can, but I will become nauseous faster. Ochako explained, causing Izuku to nod his head again, whilst writing more notes down. What about you, Swen? Do you have a quirk? Ochako asked once Izuku finished writing. I do. It's an evolution quirk called Darwin's theory. It allows me to adapt my body to suit any environment. But I can only do one change at a time which disappears after the next change. Izuku explained, causing Ochako to gain a surprised look on her face. That's new, I haven't heard of a quirk like that before. Ochako admitted, causing Izuku to smile slightly. I know. Aunt Rin said that I'm possibly the only one with that kind of quirk. Izuku said, causing Ochako to nod her head with interest. And what about side effects? If you have any, that is. Ochako added, not wanting to offend Izuku. Currently, the only side effect that I have at the moment is that I feel pain whenever I activate the evolution ability. Izuku replied, causing Ochako to wince slightly. Ouch. That's a nasty side effect. Ochako said, causing Izuku to nod his head in agreement. Yes, but I believe that's a temporary side effect. Izuku said, causing Ochako to tilt her head to the side slightly. What do you mean by that? Ochako asked, becoming curious, and Izuku became nervous. Well, the growth of my quirk was forced, Izuku replied, causing Ochako's brown eyes to whiten. Force, what happened to you? Is your aunt strict or something? Ochako asked, becoming shocked. However, Izuku quickly shook his head. My aunt got nothing to do with force part. It's kind of personal, Izuku said, starting to become nervous again. Okay, Ochako said, not wanting to push Izuku for answers. However, it was then that Ochako realized something. What do you mean by whenever I activate my evolution ability? It sounds like there's more to your quirk. Ichako pointed out, causing Izuku to freeze slightly. Well, for some strange reason, whenever I use my quirk, my whole body turns dragonish. Izuku explained, causing Ichako to gain a slight confused look on her face. Do you know why this is? Ichako asked, causing Izuku to shake his head. Nope. Me and my aunt can't find any link between my dragon form and my evolution ability. Izuku explained, causing Akahako to frown slightly. That's interesting to know, Ichako said in a thoughtful tone of voice. I don't find it important at the moment. As long as I can use my quirk to help people, I'm fine with that. Izuku said, smiling slightly. Ichako stared at him whilst blinking her eyes. Uraka, is there something wrong? Izuku asked, becoming nervous under Ichako's stare. You want to be a hero? Ichako asked, causing Izuku to nod his head with enthusiasm. Yes, it's been my dream since I was a child. I'm hoping to attend UA, but the acceptance rate there is pretty low. Izuku replied, causing Ichako to smile. I guess that we're the same then. I want to become a hero as well, along with attending UA, Ichako admitted, causing Izuku to gain a surprised look on his face, just as the school bell rang. Well, time to head back to class. Let's get going. Izuku said, causing Ichako to nod her head. It's the end of the day and Ichako is walking by herself, having said goodbye to her friends at the school gates. Finally, I can escape from the teasing. Ichako thought, blushing slightly. The reason for this is because Ichako's friend spotted her speaking to Izuku and started to tease her. Swen probably faced teasing from his friends as well. Ichako thought before seeing a familiar person with dark green hair some distance in front of her. A smile appeared on her face. Swen. Ichako shouted, causing Izuku to stop and turned around. Uraka? Izuku asked as the brown-haired girl caught up with him. Hi Swen. Walking by yourself? Ichako asked, causing the dark green-haired boy to nod his head. See, can I walk with you then? Ichako asked, stuttering slightly. Why yeah. Sure. Izuku replied, surprised slightly and starting to blush. Thanks. Ichako said with a smile on her face before the two of them started to walk again. Have you gained a fever or something, Uraka? Izuku asked, causing Ichako to tilt her head to side slightly. I haven't gained a fever. Why are you asking? Ichako asked, becoming curious. It's just that your cheeks are red. Izuku pointed out, causing Ichako to blink a few times. Oh? My friends were teasing me earlier because they spotted me speaking to you. Ichako explained, causing Izuku to nod his head slightly. Did your friend spotted you speaking to me and started to tease you as well, Swen? Ichako asked while smiling. However, Izuku gained a nervous look on his face. I don't have any friends, Izuku mumbled, not making eye contact with the gravity quirk user. However, Ichako managed to hear him. You don't have any friends? Ichako asked in a shocked tone of voice. Yes, I'm an antisocial person, Izuku replied, scratching the back of his head nervously. Ichako stared at the dark green-haired boy with a shocked expression on her face. But you such a nice person, I thought that you would have friends, Ichako said slowly, causing Izuku gain a slightly uncomfortable expression on his face. Something happened to me in the past that caused me to become antisocial. Izuku explained, causing Ichako to gain a sad expression on her face. Has this got anything to do with his quirk's force growth? Ichako thought, feeling curious. However, she decided to change the subject. I was wondering, when is it possible that I can see your transformed state? Ichako asked, causing Izuku to gain a slightly surprised look on his face. Pardon? Izuku asked and Ichako could stop herself from giggling slightly. I've been curious since you mentioned this transformed part of your quirk. I just want to see what it looks like. Ichako explained, causing Izuku to frown slightly. Well, I don't see the harm of showing you, but I can't activate my quirk in public. Izuku said in a thoughtful tone of voice as Ichako started to glance around them. The two of them are in park with little people about. Ichako's brown eyes fell on some closely grown trees, and an idea formed in her head. You could activate your quirk behind those trees. I doubt anyone will see. Ichako explained, pointing towards the trees. Yes, that will work. Izuku said before heading towards the trees. That's good. Come along now. Ichako said before grabbing Izuku's hand and dragging him. Izuku began to blush as Ichako led him into the closely grown trees. There. I don't think that anyone can see us. Ichako commented as she peered through the trees before focusing on Izuku. Right. Ready whenever you are. Ichako said with a smile on her face. Oh, okay then. Izuku said as he placed his bag on the ground and rolled up his sleeves, allowing Ichako to have a better view when he transformed. Closing his eyes, it took Izuku a few seconds to feel a strange sensation running throughout his body. Ichako's eyes widened when she saw Izuku's body transforming into its dragonish appearance. So, what do you think? Izuku asked, his voice sounding different slightly. Ichako remained silent as she stared at Izuku, examining his dark green scales. Do you find it scary? Izuku asked, starting to feel rejected. However, Ichako shook her head. No? You look friendly. Ichako said slowly, and Izuku became silent for a few seconds before smiling slightly. Thank you. Izuku said, causing Ichako to become confused. You're the first to see this form. Only my aunt and a few others knows about this. Izuku explained, but Ichako became more confused. What about your parents, don't they know? Ichako asked, causing anger to briefly appear in Izuku's eyes. Thankfully Ichako haven't seen the look in Izuku's eyes. My parents don't know about it. Izuku replied in a calm tone of voice. This caused Ichako to become surprised slightly. Paduzuan's parents don't know about his quirk. Are they dead? Ichako thought, realizing that Izuku hadn't mentioned his parents at all. You know, Izuku began to say, causing Ichako to perk up slightly. He said that I look friendly, but that wouldn't be good when I'm encountering villains in the future. I need to be scarier. Izuku explained before attempting to make himself look scary. However, this caused Ichako to burst out laughing. After a few seconds, Izuku joined in. It's been a week since Izuku and Ichako meet each other, and their friendship is slightly awkward, mainly for Izuku as he's not used to having a friend for a long time. Currently, Izuku is walking through the park by himself, since Ichako is busy with a couple of her friends in town, and currently looking through the news on his phone. No new updates on All Might, Izuku muttered as he looked through a web page dedicated to the number one hero, All Might. Makes sense though, even the number one hero will need to take breaks once in a while. Izuku muttered again before looking at an article. No news on All Might's quirk. Izuku thought, staring at the article. Even though All Might is the number one hero, practically no one knows about the true nature of his quirk. The only thing that people knows about All Might's quirk is that it seems to be an enhancement quirk, increasing his strength. Izuku has a hunch that Rin may know something about All Might's quirk, remembering once how he asked her about any possible names for All Might's quirk, and the only answer he got was it's like a flame, always burning bright. This made Izuku confused as he doesn't understand what she meant. The dark green hair boy was so absorbed in his thoughts that he didn't realizing that someone is charging right towards him. Gah! Izuku exclaimed as he felt the person ripping the bag from his back. Ha! Thanks for the bag, loser. The person shouted as Izuku regained his balance. Hey, give me my bag back. Izuku shouted before running after him, slipping his phone into his coat pocket. Should I use my quirk? I know that I'm not supposed to use my quirk in public, but this is an emergency, right? Izuku thought as he chased after the bag snatcher. It was then that he realized something. Hey, isn't that the villain that escaped from the heroes? Izuku thought, remembering the villain that was seen on the news last week. His quirk is drill, I wrote it down in my notebook. Izuku thought, becoming excited slightly that he can use his knowledge for good use. The villain glanced over his shoulder to see Izuku chasing after him. TCH. You're persistent, aren't you? The villain muttered under his breath as he continues to run. Izuku followed the villain until he found himself the dense tree area of the park. The villain suddenly stopped and turned around. Izuku's eyes widened when he saw the villain raising his free arm, which air started to circulate around before starting to spin quickly, forming a drill. So, my theory was right. He can focus his quirk on different parts of body. Izuku thought before realizing that he's running straight into danger. Die! The villain exclaimed as he prepared to punch Izuku when he got close enough. This is bad. This is bad. Izuku thought in his head, starting to panic as he thought of transforming, hoping that the scales would be durable enough to keep him alive. However, before Izuku could activate his quirk, someone shouted behind him. Texas Smash. The voice shouted, and suddenly a huge wind pressure is felt, causing Izuku to be propelled forwards, whilst the villain was sent flying backwards. However, Izuku was more focused on the voice. That's All Might's voice. Izuku exclaimed in his head before crashing into the villain, hitting the drill quirk user right in the skull, and getting the two of them knocked out. When Izuku regained conciseness, he felt disorientated. What happened to me? Izuku muttered as he sat up on the bench that he's been laying on. You kind of crashed into the villain's skull, causing the both of you to become knockout. A voice suddenly answered, causing Izuku to jump slightly before turning around to see. All Might! Izuku exclaimed, staring at the number one hero. All Might laughed slightly. Haha. Glad to see that you're alright. All Might said with his huge smile that he's well known for. Oh yeah, thank you for Izuku began to say but stopped as he looked around. What happened to the drill villain? Izuku asked, seeing that the villain is nowhere to be seen. The police got him, and this might be yours. All Might said, holding up a bag that is familiar to Izuku. Oh, thank you. I thought that I was not going to get it back. Izuku said as he took his bag out of All Might's hand. However, the dark green hair boy became confused slightly. How do you know that this is my bag? Izuku asked, looking at All Might with a small frown. Well, I saw the villain stealing your bag and chasing after him, and I chased after the both of you. All Might explained, causing Izuku to nod his head slightly. Plus my attack caused the contents of your bag to spill, which has your names on that notebook of yours, All Might added sheepishly, causing Izuku to sweat drop. I see, Izuku said slowly. I couldn't help myself from looking at some of the pages of the notebooks, very good analysis of the quirks written in them. All Might said with a thumb up, causing Izuku to scratch the back of his head with a small smile. Haha. Thanks, Izuku said nervously. It's a good thing that your bag was recovered quickly, it would be bad if the villain read that notebook. All Might said, causing Izuku to nod his head. So, how are you being looked after by Rin? All Might asked, causing Izuku to gain a slightly surprised look on his face. How do you know my aunt's name? Izuku asked, becoming curious as All Might chuckled slightly. Me and your aunt are old friends. All Might replied, causing Izuku to nod his head, slightly interested. It was then that the dark green hair boy realized something. You remember me from 5 years ago? Izuku asked slowly, causing All Might to nod his head. Of course. I've made you lots of hero work, but I never forget the important ones. All Might replied, causing a small smile to appear on Izuku's face. So how's your quirk? I've heard that it's difficult to handle because it was forced. All Might asked, causing Izuku to frown slightly. It's been painful whenever I've been using the evolution part of my quirk, but the transformation part is okay. Izuku explained, causing All Might to nod his head, remembering the dragonish form that Izuku was in the first time that All Might saw him. Have you made a progress with your quirk, in terms of making it less painful? All Might asked, becoming curious. Not much, I still feel pain even if it's dulled slightly. Izuku replied, causing All Might to nod his head slightly. Still got a long way to go then. All Might said, causing Izuku to nod his head. Yep. Hopefully the pain will disappear faster when I attend UA. Rin said that the teachers there are sort of brutal when training students to fully master their quirks. Izuku explained, causing All Might to nod his head slightly. You're not wrong about the brutal part. All Might thought, shaking slightly as he remembers a certain former homeroom teacher of his. Is Rin allowing you to attend UA, considering your time with Professor Jens? All Might asked, knowing that Rin can be protective of those close to her. Yes. And Rin is slightly protective of me, but she still supports my decision of becoming a hero. A dream I have since I was 4-year-old. Izuku explained with a smile on his face, causing All Might to nod his head. It's nice to see that Youngswen still have that dream, despite his history and finding out that you thought to be quirkless. All Might thought, remembering what Rin said during the meeting 5 years ago. It was then that Izuku's phone rang. Can you give me a second, All Might? Izuku said as the dark green hair boy took out his phone and looked at who is calling. It's from Aunt Rin. Izuku commented before answering the call. Hi Aunt. What Izuku? Where are you? Rin asked, interrupting Izuku. I'm at Sien Park. Izuku replied, noticing that Rin sounding slightly panicked. Oh, that's good to hear. Rin said, sounding relieved. Why are you asking, Aunt? Izuku asked as he became curious along with All Might, who managing to hear the conversation. There's a group of villains attacking Morale's shopping center. Please stay away from the area. Rin said before ending the call. Well, it's time to get moving. A hero's job is never ending. All Might said as he stood up. However, Izuku wasn't listening to him. Morale's shopping center, that's where Uraraka and her friends went. Izuku thought before grabbing his bag and dashing off. Hey, where are you going? All Might called with a surprised look on his face. Don't tell me that he's heading towards Morale's shopping center. All Might muttered before sighing. Rin will skin him alive if she spots him there. Better make sure that nothing's happened to him. All Might muttered again before chasing after Izuku. When Izuku reached Morale's shopping center, the entrance is crowded with people. Where's Uraraka? Izuku thought as he peered over the head of the crowd, trying to see the familiar short brown hair. However, he spotted 2 girls that Izuku recognized as Ichako's friends. The dark green hair boy made his way through the crowd to reach the 2 girls. Hey, Izuku said, causing the 2 girls to jump slightly before a round. Oh? Hi Zwen. One of the girls said, surprised to see him. Ichako mentioned Izuku to her friends. What's happening? I've heard that villains are attacking the mall. Izuku asked, causing the other friend to nod her head. That's right. The group of villains, led by a guy who has a snow quirk, suddenly attacked the mall. Most of the people in the mall have managed to escape. The friend explained, causing Izuku to nod his head. And what the others who haven't escaped? Izuku asked, starting to feel worried. The others are being held as hostages. Ichako is one of them. Don't worry though, there are heroes on the scene. The first friend and Izuku's eyes widened slightly. Uraraka is in there. Izuku thought, starting to feel more worried. Which heroes are on the scene? Izuku asked the 2 friends. Well, Recovery Girl is over there, healing those who got wounded. The second friend began to reply, pointing in a direction where an old lady wearing nurse's clothes who is with a group of people. I think the Captain Smoke and Eclipso are in the mall, not sure about the other heroes though. The second friend explained, causing Izuku to frown slightly. If Endeavor is here, then that would make things a lot easier for the heroes in beating the villain group. But then there's the hostages, making his attacks limited. Izuku muttered, gaining a thinking face. There he goes with his muttering. The two friends of Ichako thought, the zero-gravity Quirk user having told them about Izuku's habit of muttering to himself. I know that Andrin told me not to come close to this place. I should leave, but I can't just leave Uraraka. Izuku thought, clenching his fist. The dark green hair boy closed his starting to making a decision. After a few seconds, Izuku opened his eyes again. Can you hold my bag please? Izuku said as he passed his bag towards one of the friends. What are doing? The friend asked as she and the other friend become surprised. I'm going in there. Izuku replied, causing both of Ichako's friends to gain shock expressions. What? Are you crazy? The first friend asked in a shocked tone of voice, causing Izuku to smile slightly. Maybe I am. But I can't just stand here whilst Uraraka is in danger. Izuku explained, causing the two friends to look at each other. There's no stopping you, isn't there? The second friend asked, causing Izuku to shake his head before disappearing within the crowd. Do you have any idea how he's going to get in? The first friend asked, causing the second friend to shake her head. No idea. The second friend replied simply. Ichako told them that Izuku has a quirk, but haven't told them what sort of quirk it is. It was then that a commotion is heard from the back of the crowd, causing the two females to turn their heads. Smiles appeared on their faces when they saw who it was. Within Morale's shopping center, the heroes are fighting the group of villains. What do these villains want here in the first place anyway? Eclipso thought, frowning slightly. The only thing I can think of are the banks, which are located a few floors up, Eclipso thought, before sensing someone dashing towards her. The light darkness quirk user turned around just in time to see a villain holding a dagger above her. Miss Punch. A voice shouted, and the villain is hit in the face by a fist made out of mist. Thanks. Eclipso said as she turned around to see Captain Smoke and giving the pirate-themed hero a thumbs up. Heroes need to watch each other's back, right? Captain Smoke asked, causing Eclipso to nod her head before raising a hand. Captain Smoke said, blinking slightly under his mask. Light arrows. Eclipso said as arrows made out of light materialized around her before flying in the direction of Captain Smoke. Hey. What are you? Captain Smoke began to exclaim but stopped when the light arrows went flying past him. The pirate-themed hero turned around just in time to see the light arrows hitting a villain that was slowly approaching Captain Smoke from behind. However, due to the low intensity of the light in the corridor they are in, the light arrows shattered like glass. But that gave the pirate-themed hero enough time to dash towards the villain and punching them in the gut, effectively knocking them out. And I could say the same to you. Eclipso said, smirking under her helmet. Yeah, I know. Captain Smoke said, waving a hand in the air. Have you figured out why the villains are attacking the shopping center? Captain Smoke asked, causing Eclipso to shake her head. I haven't got a solid idea why they would attack the shopping center. The only thing I could think of is the different bank branches on the floor above us. Eclipso explained, causing Captain Smoke to cross his arms whilst frowning under his white skull mask. Maybe. If they are attempting a bank robbery, they're taking their time about it though. I haven't seen any villains going to these floors. Captain Smoke said, causing Eclipso to gain a worried look on her face. You don't think that this could be a massacre? Eclipso asked, gaining a nasty feeling in her stomach as she saw a majority of the villains carrying weapons. Well, I did saw some dead citizens whilst coming here, so maybe. Captain Smoke replied slowly, causing Eclipso to gulp slightly. It's a good thing that I told Izuku to stay away from this place. Eclipso thought, sighing in relief slightly. How many villains are we dealing with? Captain Smoke asked, causing Eclipso to gain a thinking face behind her helmet. I believe to be 19 villains, plus the leader, making it 20. Eclipso began to reply as she counted her fingers. And there's me, you, Death Arms and Gunhead fighting them. Eclipso said, causing Captain Smoke to nod his head slightly. Guess that it will be our win then if they weren't taking hostages. Captain Smoke said darkly, causing Eclipso to nod her head. Yes. There's the leader himself and 6 others holding the hostages, all quirk users I believe. Eclipso said, causing Captain Smoke to hum slightly. Let's hope that other heroes decide to show up to turn the tables. Captain Smoke said, causing Eclipso to nod her head. Come on. There's villain to knock down. Captain Smoke said, causing Eclipso to nod her head again. There. I'd managed to get in without being seen. Izuku thought as he crept through the shopping center's entrance. The method that the dark green hair boy used to get into the shopping center is by turning invisible, the same technique used 5 years ago. Now, to find Uraraka and the other hostages. The invisible Izuku thought as he made his way through the shopping center, hearing the sound of battle. I wonder which heroes are fighting. I know that Ant is one of them. Izuku thought, becoming excited. However, it was then that Izuku noticed something on the floor, causing him to stop, and a nasty feeling started to appear in his stomach. A dead body, Izuku thought, gulping slightly as he tried to look away from the dead body. I'd need to get used to the sight of dead bodies. I will see plenty more in the future. Izuku thought before gaining a sad feeling. Whilst the aim of being a hero is to protect people, it can be avoided that some lives will be lost. Izuku tore his eyes away from the dead body and carried on. Now, where would I keep hostages in this building? Izuku thought as he gained a deep thinking face. There's many floors and a complex design to the building, so they could be, Izuku thought before remembering something. The leader of the group has a snow quirk, so that will mean that it will be cold where the hostages are kept. Izuku muttered, smiling slightly as he gained a plan before making his way deeper into shopping center. After a few minutes of walking, the dark green hair body felt the temperature dropping slightly. It's coming in this direction, Izuku thought before heading down a corridor. After a while of wandering the shopping center, Izuku found himself in a spacious area, and saw the hostages in the center, and people, Izuku guessed are the villains, standing around them. Now, where's Uraraka? Izuku thought as he scanned the group of hostages. He saw a few people with brown hair, but couldn't see Chako. Please hope that she's one of the dead bodies around the shopping center. Izuku pleaded in his head. Hey boss. One of the villains, who has blue hair, called to a person who is wearing mostly white. What? The boss asked, glancing up from the bench that he's sitting on. Can't we just kill these hostages now? I'm getting bored. The villain asked, causing the boss to glare at him. Are you an idiot or something? If we kill the hostages, then we have nothing to bargain with when the heroes arrive. The boss explained harshly. Bargain? What do they want from the shopping center? Izuku thought, becoming confused as he decided to evolve his body so that it will grow fur. Him can't stand the cold any longer. Ignoring the pain, a now visible Izuku started to hear footsteps, and a few seconds later, Eclipso, Captain Smoke, Death Arms and Gunhead made their appearance. Give up, villains. This is our victory. Death Arms announced, but the boss kept a calm expression on his face. Really? You do realize that me and my boys are holding hostages? The boss said in a calm manner as Gunhead raised his arms. Why do you want, villain? Gunhead asked, eyeing the other villains through his mask. Nothing much. Just the money in those bank branches on the upper floors. You give us the money and we'll hand you the hostages. The boss replied, clasping his hands together. Like hell we'll reply to your demands. Death Arms exclaimed as he took a step forward. However, the boss chuckled slightly. Oh, I think you will reply to them. The boss said before standing up and walking to the group of hostages. The boss then took one at random. Izuku's eyes widened when he saw that it is Chako he's holding by her hair. Hey, let go of me. Chako exclaimed as she struggled in the air. Maybe I should kill this hostage. That will probably make your decision-making faster. The boss said as his free arm started to be covered in snow which then hardened, gaining sharp edges. You wouldn't. Death Arms exclaimed, causing the snow quirk user to chuckle slightly. I think I would, Death Arms. And I know that you wouldn't do anything rashly, that's what you're most famous for, and that goes for the other three as well. The boss said, eyeing the other three heroes as a smirk appeared on his face. A frustrated look appeared on Death Arms' face. With Izuku, the evolution quirk user is thinking fast. Uraraka could use her quirk, causing him to float in the air. That would make things easier for the heroes. But I guess that the coldness is preventing her to think properly. Izuku thought, glancing at the other hostages, seeing them shivering. I'm going to kill this girl now and show you four that me and my boys mean business. The boss said before raising the arm that is covered in the frozen snow. As the snow quirk user is about to lower the frown arm, aiming to cut off Chako's neck, something snapped within Izuku. Stay away from her. Izuku roared before dashing towards the snow quirk user. Izuku's when both Eclipso and Chako exclaimed in their heads at the same time as Izuku jumped into the air and prepared to punch the boss. Suddenly, a dark indigo aura surrounded Izuku's clenched fist, and when it made contact with the boss's face, it caused a small shock wave and sent the snow quirk skidding backwards and crashed into a pillar. Everyone gained white eyes as Izuku caught Chako before she could hit the ground. Uraraka, are you okay? Izuku asked, holding the gravity quirk user bridal style. Yes, I'm fine, Chako replied before noticing that Izuku's normal green eyes have turned indigo. However, it was then that Chako realized the position that Izuku is holding her, causing the gravity quirk user to start blushing. What hit me? The boss muttered as he slowly stood up from the ground. When his eyes fell on Izuku, he gained a slight surprised look on his face. Well, this is interesting. I didn't expect that there was a fifth hero hiding. The boss said as he glanced at the actual heroes. Due to the masks and helmet covering Captain Smoke's, Gunhead's and Eclipso's faces, no one could see their expressions. However, Death Arms has a shock expression on his face. Captain Smoke noticed the shock expression and jabbed Death Arms in the stomach with his elbow, causing the punching hero to realize that everyone could see his shock expression on his face, and cleared his face of his shock expression. The boss examined Izuku's dragon form and smirked slightly. Nice work you got there, boy. And also a powerful punch, I can still feel the sting. The boss said, rubbing the place that Izuku punched him. However, you made a mistake of letting your emotions get the better of you, making you a rookie, but I can tell that the girl that I was about to kill is close to you. The boss explained, causing Izuku to tighten his hold on Chako. Alright boys, get him. The boss said, causing the villains to start grinning. No? Eclipso yelled and began to charge towards Izuku, but was blocked off by 3 members of the group. TCH. What shall I do? Izuku thought as he eyed the villains that are approaching him and Ichako. You better think of a plan fast. Otherwise you're in a world of pain. The boss said, him being one of the villains approaching Izuku and Ichako. Ichako closed her eyes, starting to feel fear slightly. This man wouldn't be in a world of pain. A voice suddenly spoke loudly, causing the villains to stop. And why is that? The voice asked and the villains became tense, knowing who that voice belonged to. The hostages, Izuku, Ichako and the heroes began to smile. Suddenly, someone landed on the space in front of Izuku and Ichako, causing dust to fill the air. Because I'm here. All Might replied with a grin on his face as the dust disappeared. Gee great. All Might's H here. The boss said, becoming scared slightly. All Might glanced his head around to look at Izuku and Ichako. Are you two alright? All Might asked, causing the 2 teens to nod their head. Now then, villains, All Might began to say, turning his attention towards the villains in the room. Prepare yourselves. All Might said, his grin widening. Oh. And. Stop it. Izuku exclaimed as Rin pulled on his cheeks. With the arrival of All Might, the group of villains were easily defeated and now are being handed over to the police. However, as soon as Eclipso, now out of her hero costume, and Izuku are along, the light darkness Quirk user started to pull the dark green hair boy's cheeks. What did I say to you on the phone? Rin asked, still pulling Izuku's cheeks. Not to go to the shipping center. Izuku replied, his words distorted slightly. And what happened? Rin asked, glaring at Izuku slightly. I went to the shipping center. Izuku replied and Rin released his cheeks. Why did you go to the Morale shopping center when I told you not to do so? Rin asked as Izuku started to massage his sore cheeks. The Uraka was there and I couldn't just stand outside and do nothing. Izuku replied, causing Rin to sigh. Well, apart from you being reckless, I guess that your actions are justified. Rin said, causing Izuku to gain a hopeful smile on her face. But don't expect to let off easily. Rin warned, causing Izuku to become depressed slightly. Where are the hostages now? Izuku asked, glancing out of the alley that he and Rin are in. The hostages are being treated by a recovery girl. Some of them got hurt by those villains. Rin explained, causing Izuku to nod his head slightly. Why? Still worried by Uraraka? Rin asked, smirking slightly. Yes. Izuku replied before starting to blush, causing Rin to start laughing. However, it was then that Rin thought of something. By the way, Izuku. When you charged at the Snow Quirk user, what were you feeling at the time? Rin asked, causing Izuku to gain a confused look on his face. I was feeling angry, like something snapped within me. Izuku replied, confusedly, causing Rin to gain a thoughtful expression on face. An emotional response perhaps. Rin thought in her head. Why are you asking this? Izuku asked, causing Rin to perk up slightly. I'm asking because when you punched the guy in the face, a dark indigo aura appeared around your clenched hand. That's probably caused him to be sent skidding into the pillar. Rin explained, causing Izuku to gain a surprised look on his face. I didn't notice that. The dark green hair boy asked, causing Rin to hum slightly. Well, I guess that you were focused on protecting Uraraka that you forget the little details. Rin explained, causing Izuku to nod his head. But where have I heard about a dark indigo before? Rin thought before realizing something. Didn't Izuku said that Xander has a quirk that produces a dark indigo ore? Rin thought again, remembering the story of the kidnapping that Izuku told her and erased her head. But how can Izuku produce that dark indigo ore? Rin thought, becoming confused. Swen. There you are. A voice called, causing both Izuku and Rin to turn their heads to see Ichako at the entrance of the alleyway. Uraraka. What are you? Izuku began to say, but was interrupted as Ichako suddenly ran up to Izuku and hugged him. Ha. Izuku said confusedly before starting to turn red, and a grin started to appear on Rin's face. Thank you for rescuing me. Do you know how scared I was when I was about to die? Ichako asked as she released Izuku. You're welcome, Izuku said, becoming embarrassed as he started to gain the feeling that Ichako doesn't realize that Rin is standing a few feet away. So how are you feeling? Izuku asked, starting a conversation. I'm fine, recovery girl fixed me up so I'm good as new. But what about you? You just suddenly running and punched that boss person right in the face. Ichako exclaimed, causing Izuku to scratch the back of his head. I'm feeling okay. I'm just glad you're still alive and not hurt in any way. Izuku explained, causing Ichako to blush slightly. Hey, you shouldn't say those sort of things, Izuku. Do you want girls falling for you? Rin asked, loving the fact that Ichako hasn't noticed her yet. You should have heard about the things that the other people, that were hostages, said about you. Ichako said, causing Izuku to raise an eyebrow. Such as? Izuku asked, becoming curious. Well, some said that you were kind of reckless, running straight towards the leader, and some said that you have a cool quirk. Ichako replied, causing Izuku to chuckle slightly. It's too bad that they haven't seen the full extent of my quirk. Izuku said, causing Ichako to nod her head. Yeah, Chako said before finally noticing Rin. Hi Miss Wen. Chako said with wide eyes. Hello Uraraka, it's nice to see that you finally acknowledge my presence. Rin said with a smile on her face as Chako started to blush deeper. I am sorry I didn't insult you. Chako said, stuttering slightly. It's okay. You seem to be enjoying talking to Izuku. Rin said, causing the dark green hair boy to scratch the back of his head. Okay, Chako said before suddenly becoming quiet. I should probably head back home now. Mom and Dad will probably be worried about me. I've told them that I'll be at Morale's shopping center. Chako explained, causing Izuku to nod his head. I'll just go back to my other friends and tell them okay. Bye Izuku. Chako said before walking up to Izuku and kissed him on the cheek. Izuku started to blush heavily as Chako walked out of the alley. Hey. Come on now, Izuku, time to head back now. Rin said, starting to smirk as she placed an arm around Izuku's shoulder and steer him away. It's into the evening now and currently Rin and Izuku are in their apartment, where the light darkness Quirk user is making dinner whilst Izuku is having a shower. I wonder what will be said on the media sites about Izuku. Rin thought as a small frown on her face. She knew that the appearance of Izuku will reach all the media sites and be talked about. Luckily, Izuku has been in his dragon-like form throughout the time that he'd been seen by the other hostages and heroes, so no one would recognize him, even she didn't recognize him when she met him 5 years ago. I guess that means that Inko won't recognize him from the descriptions. Rin thought, suddenly feeling angry. She haven't made any form of contact with Inko over the last 10 years, since Inko decided to place Izuku in the orphanage, even though she was pressured to do so. If Izuku didn't went to orphanage in the first place, how much of a difference would the kidnapping would be? Rin thought questioningly as she chopped up some tomatoes. Would Inko be knocked out? Rin started to think before shuddering, not wanting to think off the other outcome. It was then that the front door rang, causing Rin to raise an eyebrow. Who would come here at this time? Rin muttered as she placed her kitchen knife and made her way towards the front door. When the light darkness Quirk user reached the door and opened it, she was greeted by a skinny man with long, spiky blonde hair and blue eyes. He is also wearing baggy clothes. Hi Rin. The person said with a smile on his face. Toshinori. What are you doing here? Rin asked, clearly surprised to see the true form of the #1 hero. Toshinori became nervous as he took a deep breath. I'm here because it concerns my Quirk. Toshinori replied, causing Rin to gain a slight confused look on her face, before it shifted to seriousness. You better come inside. Rin said as she steps to the side, allowing the true form of All Might to enter the apartment. Nice place, thank you. It's not like my last home, but it'll do. Rin said as she glanced over to the kitchen. Making dinner? Toshinori asked, causing Rin to nod her head. Yep. Doing a tomato and pasta dish. Rin explained as she walked into the kitchen area, causing Toshinori to nod his head. And where's Youngswen? Toshinori asked, becoming curious. He's in the shower. He has quite an eventful day today, as you will know. Rin explained, causing Toshinori to nod his head. Yes. I'd actually meet him earlier today in Sien Park. That's how I heard about the villains attacking Morale's shopping center. Toshinori explained, causing Rin to become a surprised look on her face. How did you meet, Izuku? Did you run into him or something? Rin asked, causing Toshinori to shake his head slightly. Well, someone stole Youngswen's bag and he was chasing after the person when I saw him. Toshinori explained, causing Rin to become surprised. How did Izuku got his bag back? Rin asked, knowing that Izuku still had his bag when she met Izuku after the attack on Morale's shopping center. I gave him a hand in my muscular form, don't worry. Nobody saw me transforming. Toshinori added quickly before Rin could speak. What happened to the person who stole Izuku's bag? Rin asked, glancing down at the oven to see if it hot enough for cooking. It was the same villain that managed to escape from the heroes last week, the one with the drill quirk. Toshinori replied, causing Rin to nod her head whilst humming slightly. And what happened next? Rin asked, becoming interested. Well, I managed to knock both Izuku and the drill villain out with one of my Texas Smash. Toshinori began to reply, causing Rin to sweat drop. I took the knocked out drill villain to the police and waited for Youngswen to regain consciousness. We talked and then you called Swen about the attack on Morale's shopping center, and you know the rest. Toshinori finishing explaining, causing Rin to nod her head. I see. Did Izuku remembers you from 5 years ago as All Might? Rin asked, causing Toshinori to chuckle slightly. Well, not exactly. It was me who brought up the question of how you are looking him. Toshinori replied, causing Rin to smile slightly. He told me that your training with his quirk is going slow. Toshinori said, causing Rin to nod her head. Sadly yes. It's difficult to make a quirk act normally when it was forced activated for 5 years. Rin explained, causing Toshinori to nod his head. Yes, that's true. But things don't happen quickly and smoothly, you know, it will take time. Toshinori explained, causing Rin to nod her head. So, you said something about you coming over here concerning your slam. The noise of a door closing interrupted the light darkness Quirk user, and she and Toshinori turned their heads in the direction of footsteps coming towards them. And, I'm finished, and the Izuku began to say, but stopped as he spotted Toshinori. Silence descended around the room. Hi. Izuku said awkwardly, being aware that he is only wearing a bathrobe. This is Toshinori Yagi, a friend of mine. Rin introduced the true form of All Might to Izuku. What sort of friend is this, a dating type? Izuku asked as he raised an eyebrow, causing Rin to become wide eyes. WHWH, what sort of questioning is that? Rin exclaimed, starting to blush. The innocent question, Izuku replied unsurely before quickly ducking to avoid being hit by a ball made of light. That's a topic that a boy your age shouldn't be thinking at the moment. Rin told Izuku, trying to act stern. As the two of them argued, Toshinori has a slightly stunned look on his face before shaking his head. It was then that he noticed a photo on the dining table. He walked over to the table and picked it up. The photo contains Rin in her hero costume in a pose, which is a hand on her hip and a finger pointing in a direction. Standing beside her is a much younger version of Izuku wearing an All Might Onasi, doing the same pose, and the photo was taken at an angle. Toshinori began to smile when he noticed a line at the bottom of the picture which read the pro hero Eclipso and her sidekick, All Might Jr. I can see that you're a big fan of All Might, Izuku's when. Toshinori said, causing both Rin and Izuku to look at him. Izuku noticed the photo in Toshinori's hand. Why yeah. I'm a fan of his. I have a few of All Might Sam merchandises as well, Izuku explained, starting to become embarrassed. A few? You're right. I think you got all of them. Rin thought, snickering in her head slightly. Sometime before Rin moved house, Inko decided to give Izuku's All Might's merchandise to her, possible as a form of an apology. So why are you here, Mr. Yagi? Izuku asked, becoming curious. The reason why I came here is to speak to you, Izuku's when. Toshinori replied, placing the photo back onto the table. Me? Izuku asked, pointing at himself with a confused look on his face. That's right. Before I tell you, Zwen, there's something I need to show you. Something that you need to keep absolutely secret. Toshinori explained, causing Izuku to tilt his head to the side. However, Rin suddenly realized something. Toshinori is going to make Izuku his successor. Rin questioned in her head just as smoke started to come out of Toshinori. And Mr. Yagi. Why you're steaming? Izuku pointing out, becoming startled. However, Toshinori didn't say anything as the smoke completely covered him. When the smoke disappeared, Izuku's green eyes bulged. All Might, Izuku exclaimed, staring at the number one hero. Yes. It's me, All Might Che. All Might said before starting to cough. Is that blood? Izuku asked, noticing a red liquid coming out of All Might's mouth. Rin quickly went to a shelf and picked up a box of tissues and handed them to All Might. Thank you, Rin. All Might said before using a tissue to get rid of the blood that is trickling out of mouth. You should transform back to your true form. From helping Izuku and stopping the villain attack on Morale's shopping center, your time limit must have ended. Rin suggested, causing All Might to nod his head. Time limit? What does Aunt Rin means by that? Izuku thought confusedly as All Might transformed back into Toshinori Yagi. So why are you showing me your identity, all Mr. Yagi? Izuku asked, deciding to use All Might's real name. Apart from All Might's quirk, the number one hero's name is also a hot spot for discussion. I'm showing you my true form because I've decided on making you my successor for inheriting my quirk. Toshinori replied, making Izuku more confused than he already is. Huh? Izuku said, causing both Toshinori and Rin to sweat drop. This huh is the only thing you can think of, Izuku? Rin asked in a disbelieving tone of voice. Well no, but I'm just confused on what Mr. Yagi said about inheriting his quirk. Izuku replied, making Toshinori to nod his head. Makes sense since nobody, except for a few people, one of them being Rin, knows about the truth of my quirk. Toshinori said, causing Izuku to tilt his head to the side. So what is your quirk? Many people theorize that it's an enchantment quirk. Izuku explained, causing Toshinori to nod his head. The media and the public are half correct. The truth of my quirk is that it's capable of passing between people. The name of my quirk is One for All, Toshinori explained, causing Izuku to become surprised. A quirk that's capable of passing between people? Izuku asked slowly, causing Toshinori to nod his head. Since there's a huge range of quirks, along with quirks that can affect other quirks, it does make sense for a passable quirk to exist. Izuku muttered with a thoughtful expression on his face. Both Toshinori and Rin stared at the muttering Izuku. Has he always been like this? Toshinori whispered to the light darkness quirk user, slightly creeped out by the muttering. No. He became a mutterer ever since he's been living with me. Rin explained, causing Toshinori to nod his head. But why are you choosing a successor now? You're still capable of being a hero. Izuku asked, causing Toshinori to take a deep breath before lifting his shirt, and Izuku recoiled when he saw a very nasty wound. 5 years ago, I was in a fight with a villain who inflicted this wound on me. My respiratory system is completely destroyed and I lost my stomach. Ever since I had the surgery, I've only been able to activate my quirk for 3 hours a day. Toshinori explained as he lowered his shirt. Izuku nodded his head slightly before realizing something. Wait, this fight of yours happened in the same year that you, and Rin and the other pro heroes rescued me. Izuku said, causing Toshinori to nod his head. That's correct. It was 3 months before the assault on Professor Jens's laboratory that I had my surgery. Toshinori explained, causing Izuku to gain a slightly worried look on his face. Do you think that was a good idea? 3 months doesn't seem a long time to recover from wound like that. Izuku explained, causing a grin to appear on Toshinori's face. You don't need to worry about me, after all, I'm all Migoch. Toshinori began to reply but stopped when Rin hit him on the head. You'll bleed if you overexcite yourself, Toshinori. Rin explained as Toshinori rubbed the back of his head as Izuku became worried slightly. However, a thought entered the green hair boy's head. What will happen to you though if you pass one for all to me? Izuku asked, causing Toshinori to chuckle slightly. I'll still be able to use the quirk myself, although less stronger, since you will be the possession of one for all. Toshinori replied, causing Izuku to nod his head. So, will you accept my offer, Youngswen? Toshinori asked, causing Izuku to gain a thinking expression on his face. What do you think, Aunt? Izuku asked, glancing at the light darkness quirk user. Rin closed her eyes before taking a deep breath. I know that being the next wielder of one for all is a big honor, but it's also a burden, something that Toshinori will tell you in the future I hope. Rin began to reply, glancing at Toshinori with a sharp glare, causing the true form of the number 1 hero to gulp slightly. Oh of course. Toshinori said, causing Izuku to gain a confused look on his face. But I'm okay with you being the next wielder of one for all as long you don't hurt yourself. Rin finishing replying, causing Izuku's eyes to lit up before focusing his attention onto Toshinori Yagi. I accept your offer of being the next wielder of one for all. Izuku said, causing a smile to appear on Toshinori's face as he shifted into his muscular form. Excellent. You better prepare yourself, Youngswen. The training that you will undertake will be extremely hard hack. All Might said before starting to cough violently, blood pouring from his mouth as he returned to his true form. Ah, All Might. Didn't I told you not to become overly excited? Izuku and Rin exclaimed at the same time, when in panic mode whilst the others stirred. It's been 2 days since Toshinori met Izuku and chose him of being his successor. So what are we doing on this beach? Izuku asked, looking around at the beach that is covered in trash and rubbish. Well, since I've chosen as my successor, we need to build up your muscles. If I give you one for all now, the power will probably rip you to shreds. Toshinori, in his muscular form, replied, causing Izuku to shiver at the image that enters his head. By no means that Izuku is on the skinny side, the green hair boy has some developed muscles, but he can tell that he need more muscles to become the next holder of one for all. So my training is basically moving all this trash and rubbish. Izuku asked, causing All Might to nod his head. That's correct, Youngswen. Hero work doesn't just involve saving people, it also involves volunteering work. By the time the entrance exam for AU starts, I guarantee that you will be ready. All Might explained, causing Izuku to nod his head. 10 months of hauling trash from this beach to the dumps, it will be hell. I need to organize my days so that I have time for training. Izuku thought with a deep thinking face. By the way, if you're wondering about making a schedule, I already made one up. All Might said as he passed a stack of papers to a stunned Izuku. That was fast, Izuku said as he scanned some of the papers. Wow. All Might even wrote down how much sleep I get as well. Izuku thought in a stunned tone of voice as he continued to examine the paper. By the way, I expected you saw the news on the media sites, Hero X. All Might asked, causing Izuku to nod his head with a sheepish smile on his face. Hero X is the name that people have given Izuku since nobody knows his real name. Izuku and Rin became shocked when they saw pictures of him in his dragon-like form, and guessed that one of the hostages has a phone, and took a photo of Izuku. Yeah. I've saw on the social sites. It's a good thing that nobody could recognize me in my dragon-like form. Izuku said in relieved tone of voice. I know what you mean. It's like me when I use my quirk. All Might said, causing Izuku to nod his head. By the way, how is that girl you saved? Ichako Uraraka her name is I believe. All Might asked, causing Izuku to become surprised that he knows Ichako's name. She's completely fine. She didn't got hurt or anything. Izuku replied, causing All Might to nod his head. That's good to hear. Now, let it starting on your training, let return these beach to his former glory. All Might said, causing Izuku to nod his head with a determined look on his face. At the start of Izuku's training, the green hair boy's muscles roared at him as they haven't been used on this scale before. Rin also been helping by making sure that Izuku is eating the correct type food to get the protein into his body. However, Izuku realized something with training pace. I should start some training for the entrance exam. Ichako thought as she walked down a street. It's only 5 months away and I still need to get over my sickness or at least reduce it. Ichako thought as she hummed slightly. The thought of training appeared in the gravity quirk user's head when she asked a very tired Izuku at school once, who replied that's he been training. What sort of training is Izuku going under that caused him to become that state? Ochako thought questioningly before noticing a group of people heading in her direction. This caused the brown hair to shift the hoodie on top of her head, so that her face isn't invisible. Ever since the villain attack on Morale's shopping center, she also gained attention as well as someone managed to get a photo of her. When her parents found out on the phone, she didn't told them that she wasn't one of the hostages. She made the excuse that she was delayed coming back home. This was before discovering the photos on the social sites. They bombarded her with questions, asking her if she was alright and such. However, that didn't mean that the whole school didn't bombarded her with questions like her parents. Luckily, the teachers told the other pupils to stop asking Ochako any questions. Her two friends did have the suspicion that Izuku is Hero X, because Ochako did told them that Izuku has a dragon-like form when he uses his quirk. However, that didn't stop Ochako being questioned outside of school by people who look at the social sites, which was difficult for her to get away from, and Ochako wished that she can turn invisible. Back to the present, thankfully the group of people that were walking towards Ochako didn't glance in her direction and kept on walking. Ochako let out a sigh of relief. Thank God. I don't think I can take any more this. Ochako thought as she glanced to the side and saw the beach. The gravity quirk user suddenly gained a sad expression on her face as she noticed the trash and rubbish covering the beach. This must have a beautiful beach at one point. Dad told me people started to dump their trash onto the beach. Ochako thought in a sad tone of voice. After a few minutes, an idea entered Ochako's head. Of course. With so much trash around, this is a perfect place to train. Ochako thought as a smile appeared on her face before starting to find a way down to the beach. After a few minutes of searching, Ochako is successful in finding a way towards the beach. However, it was then that Ochako noticed someone pulling what seemed to be a metal safe with a rope tied around it. What are they doing? Is the government finally going to clean this beach? Ochako thought, noticing a truck parked some distance away. I should ask them if they could leave some stuff for me to train with. Ochako thought as she started to head towards the person that is pulling the metal safe. However, when Ochako got closer, her eyes widened when she recognized the person. Izuku, Ochako asked in a shocked tone of voice, causing the now-known Izuku to turn his head to the side. Ochako. What are you doing here? Izuku asked, also in a shocked tone of voice. I was walking along the beach and I thought that this place was ideal for some training. What about you? Ochako asked, becoming curious as she tilted her head to the side. I've been training myself. I've been pulling this safe for a while now. Izuku explained, and Ochako turned her head to look behind her and saw the trail of sand. That's impressive. Ochako said with an impressive expression on her face. Yeah, thank you. Izuku said with a weak smile on his face as Ochako turned her head to face him again. After a few seconds of silence, Ochako started to giggle. What's wrong? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. I am giggling because of why your position. Ochako replied, still giggling. The position that Izuku is in is the green hair boy standing at such a steep angle, and the only thing that's stopping him from falling onto the ground is the rope. Izuku blinked his eyes for a few seconds as he stared at Ochako before starting to giggle as well. Yeah. I do kind of look stupid in this position. Izuku said before starting to get back onto his feet. It was then that Ochako started to blush deeply. The reason for this is because Izuku is currently shirtless, and the gravity quirk user can see his developed muscles. Ochako, are you okay? Izuku asked, tilting his head to the side slightly. The dark green hair boy looked down at himself, and his eyes widened when he realized that he's shirtless. Ochako became surprised when Izuku suddenly disappeared and reappeared, now wearing a t-shirt. Sorry about that, Izuku said, starting to blush. It's okay, you didn't realize that you were expecting company, Ochako explained, her eyes looking to the side slightly. Oh, okay then, Izuku said nervously, scratching the back of his head. So you've been doing some muscle training then, Ochako guessed, becoming shy whilst looking at Izuku. Yeah. I've been moving trash and rubbish from this beach to the dump for the last 5 months. Izuku explained, causing Ochako's eyes to widen. You've been moving trash and rubbish for the last 5 months. Ochako asked slowly, causing Izuku to nod his head. So how long is your training going to last? Ochako asked, becoming curious. Until I'll completely remove all the trash and rubbish from the beach. Izuku replied, causing Ochako's brown eyes to widen. Every single piece, are you sure you can do that until the entrance exam? Ochako asked in a shocked tone of voice. Yes. My instructor created a schedule to follow. Izuku explained, causing Ochako to stare at him slightly. You have an instructor? Ochako asked, causing Izuku to nod his head. That's correct, he's a friend of my aunt actually. Izuku explained, causing Ochako to nod his head before looking around. Is he around? Ochako asked, causing to frown slightly. Don't know. He busy with stuff, so he's not around here most of the time. Like I said, he created a schedule for me to follow, so I can carry on training by myself. Izuku explained, causing Ichako to nod her head in interest. I can't just say that my instructor is all might to Ichako even if she is a friend. Izuku thought, starting to blush again at the last part. Izuku, are you okay? Your face is red. Are you gaining a fever or something? Ichako asked, leaning forward slightly. No. I'm fine. Izuku replied, blushing up even more. Are you sure? Do you need to sit down or I'm here? How's the training, Youngswen? A voice suddenly spoke, interrupting Ichako as a muscular person suddenly appeared behind Ichako. Eek! The gravity quirk user screamed, jumping in the air. Izuku acted quickly and caught Ichako before she could hit the ground. Ichako, are you okay? Izuku asked to the stunned Ichako in his arms. Why yeah. I'm fine. Ichako replied whilst taking in deep breaths. Izuku looked up to see dust and smoke in front of him. That voice was All Might's voice. Please transform back to your true form. Izuku thought in a pleading tone of voice. When the dust and smoke died down, Izuku let a sigh of relief. Haizuen. Sorry I made you scream. You know you sound like a girl there. Toshinori began to say, but when he saw Ichako in Izuku's arms. Ah. That explains it. Toshinori said before silence descended around the three of them. Ichako, I'd like you to meet my instructor, Toshinori Yagi. Mr. Yagi, this is Ichako Uraraka, a friend from my school, Izuku said in an awkward tone of voice, introducing Ichako and Toshinori to each. Ah yes. You're the girl from the villain attack 5 months ago. I saw on the social sites, Toshinori said, acting as if this is the first time that he met Ichako in person. The gravity quirk user immediately hid her face with her hoodie. You don't need to hide your face, I won't tell anyone that you're here. Toshinori said in a calm tone of voice, causing Ichako to become relaxed. So, are you going to stop holding the girl or is it part of your training, Swen? Toshinori asked, a smirk appearing on his face. Izuku and Ichako didn't say anything as they stared at each other, before realizing the position they are in. Bah! Eek! Both teens yelled at the same time before Ichako jumped out of Izuku's arms. Sorry. I should have let you go sooner. Izuku said in an apologetic tone of voice. It's okay. Ichako said before she realized something. Izuku, you did say that this guy is your instructor, right? Ichako asked, examining Toshinori. That's right, Mr. Yagi is the one who started my training. Izuku replied, causing Ichako to become wide eyes. But how? He's so skinny. He even wearing clothes that are too big for him. Ichako exclaimed in a shocked tone of voice, causing Toshinori to sweat drop. Well, you can find help in the strangest of places, Izuku replied sheepishly, scratching the back of his head. I was expecting someone with lifts heavy weights or something. I would have believed you if you were being trained by All Might himself. Ichako exclaimed, causing Izuku and Toshinori to glance at each other. She isn't wrong. Both males thought at the same time. So, what are you doing here, Uraraka? Did you find out that Izuku is training here or something? Toshinori asked, causing Ichako to turn her attention towards the true form of All Might. No. I was just wandering through town before arriving at this beach, and thought that this place was a good place for training with all the trash and rubbish about. My quirk is called Zero Gravity, which allows me to negate the gravitation of people and objects. However, the side effect is that I become sick. Ichako explained, causing Toshinori to gain a thinking face. Well, I don't see the problem of you training here on this beach, it isn't private land after all. Plus, it could lift the load off Swen. Toshinori muttered, however, Ichako heard the last part. What do you mean by lifting the load? Is Izuku doing too much or something? Ichako asked, causing Izuku to scratch the back of his nervously. Well, Swen here has been increasing his training than what I've been written down. Toshinori replied, causing Ichako to become wide eyes. What? Do you want to die or something before even attempting the entrance exam? Ichako exclaimed, causing Izuku to gain a guilty expression on his face. Well, I've done some calculating, and I found out that I would have been doing around about 98 days of training, so I thought that I would increase it. Izuku explained, causing disbelief to appear on Ichako's face. Why didn't you transform into your dragon form? Surely that will give you some sort of boost in strength and stamina. Ichako asked, becoming worried. Well, that's kind of my fault. I told Swen here not to use his quirk, saying that the training will be more beneficial to his non-quirk body. Toshinori explained, causing Ichako to stare at him for a few seconds before closing her eyes and taking a deep breath. Ichako? Izuku asked, become slightly nervous. That's it. Ichako suddenly exclaimed, causing Izuku and Toshinori to jump, and it took the number one hero all his mental strength, not to accidentally activate his quirk. I'm going to train with you, Izuku, and I'm not taking no for an answer. Ichako said, and Izuku became scared slightly. I've never seen Ichako like this before. She must be fired up. Izuku thought, backing away from the gravity quirk user. Toshinori stared at Ichako for a few seconds before starting to chuckle. The next 5 months seemed to fly past as Izuku and Ichako trained together, the dark green hair boy doing the bulk of the clearing up, whilst Ichako used her quirk to move the trash and rubbish into smaller piles, to make things easier for Izuku. Toshinori can't help but feel proud at how determined the two of them are to clean the beach and improve themselves, even though Ichako still felt the feeling sickness. Finally, it's the day of the entrance exam and Izuku is at his home, getting prepared to leave for UA. I can still taste that strand of hair that All Might gave me. Izuku thought, thinking about the piece of hair that he had to swallow, signaling that the power of One for All is transferred to a new host. But why do I gain a strange feeling in my body? Could it be that my existing quirk is reacting to One for All? No, it's something completely different, but what? Izuku muttered as he put his shoes on. Izuku, you're muttering again. Rin pointed out, causing the green hair boy to perk up. Haha, sorry Aunt Rin, Izuku said with a sheepish smile on his face. GZZZ. Do you really need your quirks? I think villains will be more scared of your mutterings. Rin said, causing Izuku to laugh slightly. So, have you got everything you need? Rin asked, causing Izuku to nod his head. Yes Aunt. I should get going. Izuku said as he opened the door and prepared to step outside. Wait a minute, Izuku. Rin said, causing the dark green hair boy to stop and turn his head. Is there something wrong, Aunt? Izuku asked as he watched Rin disappearing and returned after a few seconds, carrying a camera. Say cheese. Rin said as she raised the camera. Huh? Izuku said with a questioning look on his face as Rin took a photo. Not the best facial expression, but it will do. Rin muttered as she examined the photo that she took. What are you doing, Aunt? Izuku asked, clearly confused. Oh, I thought it was a good idea to take a photo of you taking your first step of becoming a hero. Rin explained, causing Izuku to chuckle slightly. I'm only at the starting line. There's a chance that I won't pass the entrance exam. Izuku explained, but Rin shook her head. Don't say that. I sure you will pass. Rin said, causing a smile to appear on Izuku's face. Yeah. I better be off now, I don't want to be late. Izuku said as he walked out of the door. Good luck. Rin called just as Izuku closed the door. I'm going to ace this test. Kasuki Bakugo thought with smirk as he walked towards the gate entrance to UA, a huge building in the shape of H. I wonder how Deku is doing. The blonde hair boy thought before gaining a slight surprised look on his face. Why did I thought of that? Kasuki thought in a confused tone of voice. It's been 11 years since you last saw the quirkless boy, from his knowledge anyway, and things have taken a drastic turn. It happened after a month since Kasuki and the others at kindergarten found out that Izuku was labeled as quirkless and started being bullied. However, one day Izuku didn't turn up at school, and Kasuki didn't thought much of it. But, it was 2 days afterwards that Kasuki gained the feeling that something isn't right, and he told his parents. He soon found out that Izuku was taken to an orphanage. The explosion quirk user couldn't decide if he wanted to feel happy or angry. Happy that he didn't have to deal with that useless Deku anymore, angry that Aunt Inko just decided to get rid of her son, even though she said she pressured. Yes, even though Bakugo found Deku annoying, he was still his childhood friend. However, it still caused the Bakugos to stop speaking to Inko Midoriya. But the Bakugos still kept an eye on Inko. During the 11 years, Inko Midoriya got back together with Hisashi Midoriya, Izuku's father, who left when he found out that his son was quirkless, and a year after they got back together, which was a month after Inko placed Izuku in the orphanage, or got rid of Izuku, in Kasuki's mind, the two had another child, a daughter named Izumi Midoriya, who gained a hybrid of her parents' quirks. The thought of Izumi caused Kasuki to become angry. It became in his eyes. Izumi is basically just Izuku's replacement in the Midoriya family. However, the explosion quirk user knew that he can't directly be angry at Izumi, who didn't do anything wrong. If only she knew that she has a quirkless brother that Mrs. Midoriya decided to get rid of. What will her opinion of her parents will be? The dark side of Katsuki's mind would think every time the explosion quirk user lay eyes the happy daughter of Midoriya family. As the explosion quirk crossed the gate entrance to UA, he noticed a person with dark green hair walking with a person with brown hair somewhere ahead. Katsuki shook his head. Great. The moment I start to think of Deku, I started to see him everywhere. Kasuki muttered, growling slightly. I need to keep focus for the entrance exam. Kasuki thought again as he quickened his pace.